Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this meeting of the Executive. My name is Councillor Paul Follows, Leader of the Council and Chair of this meeting of the Executive. This meeting is being held in the Council Chamber at the Berries in Godalming and webcast live, and the agenda was published on Monday, the 2nd of February 2026. Barry, have there been any apologies?
No, Chair, I've not received any apologies.
Thank you. I think we've got one who is late, but I'm expecting her to be here soon. Right, item 2, the minutes. Members, can I have your approval to sign the minutes of the 9th and 10th of December 2025 and the 13th of January 2026?
Agreed.
Thank you. Item 3, declarations. So just to make sure we cover this one. On the community asset transfer item, which I believe is item 12, there are 7 members of the Executive, including myself, who are conflicted by virtue of being a member of a town or parish council that has been an applicant to the community asset transfer policy. For the benefit of anybody watching and the record, those councillors are myself, Councillor Crowe, Councillor Mirrlees, Councillor Rivers, Councillor Fairclough, Councillor Merriweather and Councillor Juice. So the remaining 3 members in the room, Councillor Townsend, Councillor Keel and Councillor Long, are not conflicted, and the minimum numbers of members for the Executive to be quorate is 3. So therefore we are quorate at that point. Are there any other declarations of interest on any of the other items on the agenda? And just to be clear, those 7 members of the Executive will leave the room for that item, and Councillor Townsend will take the chair for that item. Any other declarations of interest to raise? Councillor Townsend?
Just to clarify for the point of record, I am the Surrey County Councillor for Cranley and Newhurst. However, I have not been involved in the decision making or discussions on their application for community asset transfer. Thank you.
Councillor Keel.
Well, I have been advised I don't need to actually declare it under this item, rather that I should declare that I have a non-interest later on under the CAT item. Thank you.
Thank you. There will be a number of governance changes that we're not quite used to, but we have been through in depth with officers as to how those governance arrangements will be undertaken. And I'll leave that for officers to take any questions on during that item on the agenda. Right, item 3, questions from the public. I've had 3 notifications prior to the meeting, and I'm also going to allow Councillor Adam Juice of Godalming Town Council also to speak, as well as his was also sent in. So I'm going to start with a statement from, and apologies if I've mispronounced your name at any point, Ionella Emmett. If you'd like to come forward to the 3rd seat there, the microphone can be turned on with the little button in the centre and it will glow red when it's on.
Can everyone hear me well? Sorry. Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. So, first of all, my name is Ionella Emmett and I'm a resident in Farnham. And I appreciate very much the opportunity to speak today. I shall be reading my notes just so I can keep to a good timing. First of all, I'll just be direct a little bit about the concerns that we have in relation to the residents and the business that they are hosted in Farnham, and that we face a lot of issues. As a resident, I am affected also by the ongoing disruption caused by Farnham improvement projects led by SEC. Large parts of the town remain dominated by construction activity, drilling, road closure, diversions, and of course reduced access to certain car parks, certain parts of the town. These works have significantly discouraged visitors, and especially as well residents, and many businesses are experiencing sharply reduced footfall. Some have already closed or relocated. We lost on Borough Street just before the closure of the road 4 businesses. So that is quite critical for such a tiny little street. In addition to this, Waverley Borough Council has continued to raise parking charges. In certain car parks, daily fees now reach £25, levels more comparable to central London than a small suburban town. Unfortunately, the quality of these facilities does not reflect these prices. The bays are narrow, lighting is poor, bins overflown, potholes remain unrepaired, and overgrown vegetation is left unmanaged. And that's not just now, it's continuous. These issues have been, of course, reported since October by myself and other residents as well, to Councillor Fairclough, who's been looking into it, and more recently to Councillor Lees as well. And we have the responses that we got for them focuses mainly on limited funding and, of course, limitation as well in resources, but there's no clear timeline for improvement. Female are struggling to actually park in those car parks because they feel unsecure. Literally, if you get mugged, robbed, or beaten, nobody will come to help you because they can't see you in the first place. It's pitch dark, literally, some of the car parks. I just parked in Godalming car park and I thought it was a breath of fresh air. It was actually perfectly paved and, of course, 2 light bulb lighting, individual lighting. I thought it was ideal. That's something that we don't have in Farnham. We're literally left in the dark. As of now, it seems that we're just good for contributing to council tax funds and parking fees, but nothing of value being distributed in return to benefit the residents. A key example is the introduction of the new solar power parking machines. These were presented as well as a benefit to the residents. And in all fairness, this was mainly to streamline the revenue collection and also to reduce your electricity costs. The design also has caused difficulties. A lot of the residents, much elderly ones who are not familiar with the technology, they're faced with a blank screen and didn't know how to use the machine. I've escalated this issue and we were told that they're going to put some instructions on it. But yet there's no money for lighting, there's no money for cleaning, there's no money for stickers, but yet there's money for boards where you can advertise that the parking charges are going up. Does that seem fair as an expense? I don't know. Maybe you can explain more into detail, you know, why that is more important than the safety of your residents. Also, residents, they feel quite disappointed as well in general with the overall management of the car parks. The residents have 2 proposals for this to help us also save our town through this treacherous FIP project. And one of them is to make Briarwell free car park for the duration of the works. And that according to Surrey Council, is actually until the end of November. Brightwell was given to WBC, we know in July, and in August it became a payable car park. But currently, this car park is really severely underused. On a sunny day on Sunday midday, I went there and there were just 10 vehicles, taking in consideration that this is a 9-floor car park with over 170 spaces available. And it just shows that, and a lot of these vehicles also belong to the residents, if you're thinking about it, so which their fee is included in their maintenance fee that they pay, right? So that means that the car park is purely underused. Just again, another fact which adds to the safety and security of people using that, there's a large amount of teenagers going and meeting there, playing with their bikes, running on the ramps there, and also they have a little bit more fun while they're being chased by the maintenance guy. So that's another serious factor, you know, because it's so empty, people are abusing the space. Managing Brightwell free will support residents and encourage much-needed footfall, particularly for the people from the northern side of Farnham, where many choose to shop in Aldershot and Farnborough, where it's easier to access and also free car park. Residents are also proposing the reintroduction of Monday to Thursday, £1 after 1 p.m. structure across all central located car parks, similar to the approach that we have during the festive period. Measures like this will help the businesses reinstate themselves and be able to bring footfall into town. Yes. Look, the residents are asking for constructive support and solutions on this. And if these are not coming by the end of March, we don't want to be at conflict with our council, but we will have to become a little bit more thorough and firm about our position. We're actually ready to strike a campaign for residents to look into, reconsider using your facilities, your parking facilities. And this is not a threat. This is something that we're standing firm because if they're not good for us, and if we're paying money for rubbish, it's not worth to us, you know, the money spent. This is not something that we wanted. We don't want actually to be at knives with our very own council. We wanted to be in collaboration. We wanted to find a solution that helps Farnham stay alive. At the moment, it is a major struggle for the businesses. Thank you very much.
Okay, I'm going to just offer Tony in particular and any of the others that were mentioned. Do you want to say anything now? Otherwise, I'm going to make a proposal for how we respond to the comments.
If it's acceptable to everyone, I'd prefer to do, I think what you're going to say, which is to provide a proper response rather than...
Absolutely. So there are a number of things that you've commented on, some of which are within the Borough Council's direct powers and some of which are not. Some of them are things that the council has influence over and some of them are things that we have nothing to do with. What I will ask officers to do is provide a response in consultation with Councillor Fairclough as the portfolio holder for parking to provide a full written response that details all of the points that you have made. There are far too many of them for us to go through accurately with you right now. We will get that to you as soon as it can be done. I would say probably at some point next week. We'll try and aim to get that to you. We'll send that to you by email. I've got your email address.
That's fine.
And
Yeah.
if there's any follow-up.
I would
that you
like
want
the
to do-
matters to remain to the car parks focus rather than the FIP. I know the
will-
SEC issue. We have our own
That's all right.
separate
We'll
battle. Okay.
respond as far as we can to the FIP as well. Although it sits with Surrey, we'll give
We
as
know
much
that,
response
exactly.
as we can. Okay. Thank you very much indeed. Right, I've got then three other registered speakers. The next one is Lisa O'Sullivan, the clerk of Hazelmere Town Council.
Thank you very much. I hope that the executive has managed to read the information that I sent last week in response to some information we were given from the officers that recommended refusal for 2 sites in Hazelmere for CAT transfer. Firstly, Church Meadow, I'd like to just reiterate, please, that this is a highly neglected area at the moment, in a really tricky position with dreadful access and significant drainage issues. You might ask why we want to take it on, but the fact of the matter is that it's really unlikely to be at top of the list for anybody to develop for housing in a near future. There's a house opposite whose drainage pipe I've now discovered goes down into that piece of land, which is why it's so boggy and terribly difficult to do anything with. But it is rich in biodiversity. You've seen the letters that I've sent you from local residents to tell you about the wildlife that are there. There's wild orchids there. And the town council, along with the residents, really want to develop this into a community garden. And it ticks so many boxes for us in terms of biodiversity, community, health and well-being that I know are also priorities for your council. And we're really hoping that you agree with us that the community and environmental benefit outweighs leaving it, because ultimately we don't know what the West Surrey Unitary is going to do, but I would hazard a guess that it's going to leave it to get more bottles and more rubbish. And there's a real buzz around the community now at the prospect of a project on that site, including from the church, including from the local schools. And we really hope that you take that into account, please, this evening when you're considering that CAT transfer. Secondly, the Walmer Hill pitches and pavilion. The main issue that we had also that was identified was the access. We believe now that this can be fairly easily resolved, having spoken with Surrey County Council and having writing that I forwarded on to you, that they're very happy that there's a reciprocal agreement between yourselves or whoever the landowner would be and them for the access and the exit from that site. And actually the piece of land that's being used is the exit at the moment. My understanding is that actually that is the entrance to Waverley's land. So actually it isn't landlocked as we've been led to believe. It's just that at the moment, I'm back. Part of the entrance goes to Surrey's land, and the other entrance, which is being used as an exit, goes on to Waverley's land. We are assured by our legal team that this could easily be covered off by way of an easement, and we'd be very happy to do that legally. There was also revenue loss cited as a reason for not doing the transfer. We believe, and I've sent you some high-level information on the numbers, that if it's properly managed and if proper sinking funds are put in place to enable it to grow and be invested in, actually it's going to wash its face. It's not a big cash cow. There is no real-term revenue loss in transferring it to the town council. The other big thing is we've been asked to wait and so till the site can be considered as a whole, along with the edge, once the whole site is transferred to the new unitary authority. We believe that this really underestimates the difference or doesn't take into account the difference in those 2 sites. They're very different. One's a big leisure centre, one is the sports park with the outside pitches, and to sort of lump them in together actually doesn't take into account how differently they need to be treated. The Edge, for instance, we know that the local school will be very interested in taking that over. There's been a number of issues there. At the moment, Hazelmere Town Council and Walmer Hill Sports Association have no interest in taking that over if it means any delay in the outside spaces at all. There's a real momentum here. You know, I've given you all the information on all these brilliant people, all these sports clubs, all the plans that we have. The way that it's used is such a vital community asset, and there's real momentum there. And we don't want to stall that by waiting. It won't just be until next April when the new unitary comes into being. It waits then until this becomes the top of their list of priorities, and who knows when that would be, and that would stall very much the work that we're looking to do at the moment. So in conclusion, we're hoping that the freehold transfer of both of the sites could be approved today, and we're very happy for that to be subject to an easement or any other anything else that you would care to put onto that. And if not, could we please ask that you might defer the decision so that we can better have a conversation with you to assuage any of the issues that you still have outstanding. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Just to advise all of the exec, because I think Kika was going to ask to speak. I've been advised by officers that the 7 members who are up here that are conflicted should not respond to any of the public questions on this subject. But Councillor Townsend obviously will be taking that section of the of business, which will follow the questions. She has obviously heard that, and I'm sure that will be dealt with as part of the debate. But I'm not taking any speakers or any from the executive on those questions, and I'm afraid I'm not going to reply to you for the reasons I've outlined. So
Okay.
it will be handled in the next item. The same will go, I suspect, for the other 2 speakers. So I could now take Sarah Nash, the Deputy Clerk of Godalming Town Council.
Thank you. I'm here to speak about the community asset transfer request for the Berriesfield in Godalming. The community asset transfer request for this site set out its significance as the principal recreation ground serving the community. The officer report before you, while recommending against transfer, contains findings that materially support the opposite conclusion. The report states that asset transfers provide greater autonomy and localised management, and that to a community's detriment, asset management will become more remote following local government reorganisation. That reasoning is relied upon to justify transfers elsewhere. Applied consistently, it applies most strongly to the Berriesfield. A management agreement does not address remoteness. Ownership and strategic control remain with a higher authority, offering limited delegation rather than genuine local stewardship. The report also confirms the executive's commitment that the Berriesfield will remain in community use and will not be developed. On that basis, reliance on undefined strategic reasons for retaining the freehold requires explanation. Protection of use can be secured through covenants, as it is for other transferred sites. Community asset transfer is discretionary and assessed on community benefit, which the report itself identifies. The report confirms there is no legal impediment and acknowledges that freehold transfer improves efficiency. Godalming Town Council already manages events and holds a premises licence, and transfer would formalise existing arrangements rather than introducing new risk. My question is this: what objective basis is there for refusing the freehold transfer of the Berriesfield to Godalming Town Council in favour of a management agreement, given the report's findings on remoteness, the absence of legal impediment, and the commitment to permanent community use? Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. As before, my comments stand and that we dealt with. And my apologies, Councillor Alex Adam of Godalming Town Council. I think I had one of my moments where, because Adam Juice was in direct visual range, I did one of my Godalming Town Council faux pas and managed to conflate the view together. So my apologies, Councillor Adam.
I was glad I'm in such good company. Thank you very much, councillors. I'm Alex Adam, Councillor Farncombe and Godalming Councillor of Farncombe and Catsall. I've got my question is again for the community asset transfer and it relates to the Berriesfields. I do hope that the councillors who were making the decision tonight have the kind of wisdom and grace to, I'm not going to say ignore, but disagree with the officer's recommendation and actually support the full transfer of that incredibly important asset across to Godalming Town Council so we can use it for the benefit of our community, both in the short and long term. To do so would be inherently wrong, truth be told. But my question is, will this be a recorded vote? Because I think the people, I know you've got a lot to go through, but I think the residents of Godalming in particular would like to know what decisions have been made and by whom. So as a request as much as a question.
The only bit I will respond to there is that there will only be 3 members in the room. It'll be very obvious who's voted for what and why, as it always is in executive anyway. Right, we're now done with, so thank you, Councillor Adam. We are done with the public speaking section of business. Item 5, questions from members. There are no questions from members. Item 6, leader and portfolio holders updates, which I am striking from the agenda because of the time constraints. Although before I go on to the rest of the business, I am going to say tonight above all nights is one where can I ask everybody to not repeat themselves, not go off on unnecessary tangents. Think of just a minute rules essentially, and try and apply that to the debate for the course of the evening. I will be taking one further item, which is the recommendations from overview and scrutiny, which we'll try and do in a relatively swift way before we then move on to the CAT items, and the 7 members that are conflicted will depart. So if I can turn your attention to the sheet that's been provided supplementary, the recommendations to executive from overview and scrutiny. There are a number of points to consider. The first is the update from the 9th of February ONS. And then we've got the overview and scrutiny committees of Monday, the 26th of January and Tuesday, the 16th of December to consider. So I'm going to, hopefully everybody's got one of these or has seen the update sheet. So going down the list, Cranley Leisure Centre is the first. Councillor Townsend, did you want to take these?
Yes, thank you. I can confirm that the figure for the increased loan requirement will be included in the public report that goes to full council.
And my understanding for the rest of the items, so if we go to the rest of the Cranley Leisure Centre items, a number of these will probably be dealt with in the item later. But as far as I can see, almost all of these were either provided directly in the report or in supplementary reports that followed. Councillor Townsend.
Yes, all of these answers were provided in the report available to the ONS last night. We are including in the report to the full council an additional Appendix 4 will be provided outlining some of the additional benefits of the Passive House build.
And I think we've been through the rationale for the original decision to go Passive House. And there's a couple of things I just wanted to comment. There are a few statements within the ONS recommendations that I would subsequently have liked more detail on. For example, a more conventional low carbon leisure centre. I'm not entirely sure what that means and what a more conventional low carbon leisure centre actually is. I would appreciate from ONS some clarity as to some of the language that they're using. In a few cases, I've been present to try and ask for it, and it's not been forthcoming. Are there any other comments from anybody on the Cranley Leisure Centre sections of the ONS recommendations? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to go then to the recommendations in regards to the land up to the rear of 69 High Street. Any comments? Councillor Merriweather.
I'll be addressing that when we talk about that item.
Okay, thank you very much. And then finally, the general budget recommendation items, which predominantly relate to car parking, but a few others. Any other comments from anybody? Tony?
Okay, so first of all, with respect to the 0% average increase in council-owned car parks, our primary objective has always been to prepare a balanced budget. A further objective is to implement clear, concise tariffs for our visitors. Such objectives will prevent us from proposing a 0% average increase this year. However, we are pleased to confirm that the increase itself is less than 1%. In fact, it's only 0.79%. With respect to maintaining a 6-hour car park charge, there is no financial impact in maintaining a 6-hour charge, and as you will see later this evening, we will do so. With respect to the status of Brightwell's car park and its charging tariff, we have a duty to share any proposed tariff charges with Surrey County Council. However, Surrey County Council has no authority of what we propose to charge. Executive members should note that Brightwell's car park is currently acting as an alternative to the Farnham Leisure Centre car park, whilst the heat pumps are being installed. As a result, leisure centre visitors are being invited to use the Brightwells car park and are being charged for parking at the current leisure centre car park rates. With respect to transparent data about evening charges, in 2024-25, Waverley received £231,407.20 from evening charges. That equated to 108,738 transactions. To January of this year, Waverley received £236,892,000.15 from evening charges, equating to 89,914 transactions, and our projection for the year 2025-26 total income is approximately 315,000, approximately 119,000 transactions. There appears to be little seasonal trends, with average transactions around 10,000 transactions per calendar month. And finally, with respect to the removal of paragraph 6.28, revenue received from evening charges does in part enable Waverley to provide free Sunday parking, and to reflect this, we propose to change the wording of point 628 to read as follows, and I will send this to the relevant people. Evening charges, the revenue from which helps enable the council to retain. Thank you.
So thank you for that. When we get to the items on the agenda where there are outstanding ONS comments that we need to address as part of those items, could I ask the portfolio holders to just preface it within response to ONS to help with the construction of the minutes for Barry and others? Right, at that point then, we move then on to item 12, which we're taking as the first substantial item, which is the community asset transfer. So I'm going to ask the 7 of us who are forced to depart this item to do so with a small adjournment while we do. And Liz will then take the chair.
Are you ready to reconvene? Officers, ready? Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And thank you, members. I appreciate that our numbers have been depleted slightly and that there are just 3 members now in the room, myself, Victoria Keel, and Gemma Long as well. And I thank you. I know that this is a significant responsibility for us to take on, and thank you for accepting this task. And as well to all the officers, I know how much work has gone into this, and, you know, thank you very much. I believe, Victoria, you wanted to say a few words before we started?
Thank you very much, Chair. I would just like to please place on the record and ask that it be noted in the minutes that my husband, Tom Keel, is a Godalming Town Councillor, Chair of the Environment and Planning Committee on that council, and is the Godalming Deputy Mayor, and I am his consort. I have not had any involvement with the applications made by Godalming Town Council and have come to this meeting with an open mind. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Keel. In the absence of the lead councillor, can I ask the Assistant Director for Assets and Property to introduce this report? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. The CAT report covers the officer's recommendations to the community asset transfer applications that the council has received over recent months, and based those recommendations on how the applicants have addressed the requirements of Waverley's approved community asset transfer policy, whilst also addressing the council's best value duty to secure continuous improvement. The CAP policy was set up and approved in June 2024 and provides criteria by which applications can be considered as meeting the conditions of the policy in line with the requirements of the Localism Act 2011. Each application has been examined via the CAP process, with a report explaining whether the application meets or does not meet the requirements. Each application has also been assessed against the Council's best value duty under Section 3.1 of the Local Government Act 1999, with a considered judgment by officers whether the arrangements that would come into place were the Council to agree to transfer these assets complies with this duty. 19 applications received by Farnham, Hazelmere and Godalming Town Councils and Ewhurst and Chiddingfold Parish Councils are considered by officers to be suitable for a recommendation to transfer. 5 assets considered by officers that are not recommended for approval have reasons provided within the report. One of those, Brightwell's Green Space, Farnham Town Council have requested that their application be withdrawn. The report also provides advice on other asset transfer expressions of interest received that were not progressed to application stage, where it was clear that they did not meet the requirements of the CAP policy or have taken a different course of action outside of the CAP process. Information on these is provided in the report. A major factor taken into consideration is the cumulative effect on the Council's green spaces service provision by the transfer of several green spaces and facilities currently managed by the Council within this service. The report discusses these points both on staffing and financial impact and shows how officers consider a net benefit or break-even situation would be achieved. The Green Spaces Service have said that they have no objection to the transfer of these spaces. Overall, officers' considered advice also led to the recommendation to the transfer of the freehold interests rather than granting a long lease to secure the long-term ownership of the asset by the town and parish councils. And finally, the report also states as part of the next steps that the assets and property officers would negotiate and agree final heads of terms, and once those are finalised, there is a delegation granted to the Assistant Director for Assets and Property to complete the contract to transfer in consultation with the Joint Strategic Director for Finances and Resources. Thank you.
Thank you. And I understand that councillors Busby and Hyman have requested to speak on this item, and they will have up to 3 minutes each. Are they there? Thank you. Councillor Busby.
Thank you, Chair. And yes, thank you for the opportunity to speak. Keep it very brief. I just wanted to give my wholehearted support to the proposed transfer of the Green and Coxcomb Lane recreation ground to Chiddingfold Parish Council. This has been something that's been talked about for many years, so it's great to see it come before exec this evening. These are the two most important community spaces in the village, sitting right at the heart of village life and used by residents of all ages, as well as for a host of important community events. And Chiddingfold is fortunate to have a very competent and well-run parish council, which already does an excellent job as leaseholder for both sites, demonstrating that local stewardship is already working very well in practice. So I have no doubt that bringing these two important green spaces under their sole stewardship is in the best interest of the village and its residents. So thank you very much for the opportunity to speak, and to officers for all of their work on this.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Busby. And Councillor Hyman, are you there?
Indeed. Yes, thank you, Chairman. Absolute phenomenal amount of work. We can tell by the thickness of the papers that's gone into this from the officers, and I think we all thank them very much indeed for that. Just a couple of issues, and I have mentioned a couple in writing to the to officers, but I wanted to check with you in respect of supplement pages 112, 120, 124 and 133. There are plans and an aerial view of Borelli Walk in Farnham. None of those are the registry plans, and particularly the one that says it's a land registry plan certainly isn't. And I would like to question: are we certain that Brightway Walk is owned by Waverley? Because when we were going through the East Street Brightwells process years ago, we were always told that it belonged to Surrey County Council. And I just wanted to check to make sure that we knew what we were doing on that one there, because I did have to pick up on before Christmas that we were being told that we were going to be transferring things which I knew to be in trust, the Ridgeway Trust and others, and that's been corrected. I just want to make sure that we do know about that. There's no title report which is referred to at page 115, so I'm unable to check. I might be wrong. It may have been transferred, but I don't recall it being transferred at the same time as the main park in the centre of Farnham. So if you can just check with that we are the owners of Borelli Walk. It also refers in there to Riverside, which the town council owns. Well, there's an awful lot of Riverside at Farnham, and I wonder which bit of land that refers to. But I don't know whether you're going to be able to check on that now. I did email earlier on, but I didn't notice it until this afternoon. So I don't know whether officers have had a chance to look at it. I'll leave it at that for now. But yeah, absolutely great work in getting all this done and going through. Very pleased to see it. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Hyman. I believe we've seen all of the relevant title documents. However, don't forget this will be subject to formal heads of terms anyway, and that will be we'll go through obviously all of the relevant details. So I hope that puts your mind at rest. Thank you. Right, now we're going to move on to the particular item. And as has been said by officers, you know, we are considering this in line with our community asset transfer policy, and that's to ensure a transparent and consistent approach to requests for community asset transfers. And we will be guided by this policy, all of us, when we will be considering the items under this particular agenda item. The council holds the position of trustee in relation to the assets that it owns and safeguards on behalf of its local community, and any transfer an asset must ensure that the sustainability and preservation of that asset for the community. So we're looking at ensuring that in our decision making tonight. I'm sure that has been said, you know, and it's a very valid concern that there's been concerns about the unknown future and as yet the composition and direction of the unitary authority. However, I must stress that we have to make our own decisions based on the factual evidence that we have before us and not on unknowns at this stage. And I have every faith that that you will do that, and I know how seriously you're taking this responsibility. We have got extremely comprehensive reports on attached to each of the items under consideration, and I know I have, and I'm sure the other members have read these reports extremely carefully. We do have one amendment to the report which has been referred to by officers, which is to defer the application for Brightwells Green Space at the request of Farnham Town Council. And we will obviously adjust that recommendation when we come to that part of the agenda, if that's okay with members. Thank you. First of all, we will be looking at the first part of the report that supports the principle of transferring the freehold interest. And for the sake of clarity, I am going to go through these in tranches. The following properties to Farnham Town Council, which is Badshot Lee Recreation Ground, Baldry's Recreation Ground, the Borelli Walk, Oast House Recreation Ground, Rowledge Recreation Ground, Bourbons Road Open Space, Recklesham Recreation Ground, Badshot Lee Football Club, Westfield Lane, Recklesham, Webburn Road allotments, and 6 Bells allotments on Hale Road. The Town Council from the report has provided the necessary evidence that it has sufficient and sustainable arrangements to take care of these sites with no strategic impact placed on the council by transferring them. And this assessment of best value has been outlined in the report. So we have paragraphs 6.13 and 6.14 of the report with each individual site outlined in that. We'll take that sort of tranche first. So have members got any questions or points of clarification on these particular sites? Thank you. Councillor Keogh.
Thank you very much, Councillor Townsend. I just had a question of clarity, which I think would apply to all of the applications that we're looking at today. Could I just ask for confirmation that with the freehold interest being transferred, that any existing leases in place also transfer with that? Thank you.
I'll defer to our legal advice there.
So yes, any lease hold interests or any leases would transfer along with the freehold, along with any easements that have been granted across that land as well.
Thank you. Councillor Murray, you're indicating to me, apologies, did you register to speak on?
Didn't, Chair, but if I could just on this little item as the Mayor of Farnham.
Sure, I'm giving Chair's discretion to allow you to speak.
Thank you very much. It's not controversial at all. It's just to say, on behalf of Farnham Town Council, I would like to say thank you for the officers, for the work and the cooperation. It's been absolutely exceptional. The Town Clerk and Ben and Andrew, who I know have been working on the business plans, and they're very grateful for the cooperation and for the for making it so efficient. So thank you very much. And I do, on the Brightwells issue, it is a matter of deferring because we understand that there's contractual issues over the leases and the freehold. So we are interested in that at some future if it comes back. So thank you very much. And thank you for letting me speak, Liz. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. Yeah, I used the word defer in my, and will be used within the recommendation when we come to that point. Councillor Keogh.
Thank you very much. Just overall, I would also like to thank our excellent officers for all of their hard work in preparing these detailed reports. There has clearly been an immense amount of work on this by them and also by the applying towns and parishes. I've read all of the contents carefully, and I'm obviously aware that we have a duty to secure the best value for the people and businesses of Waverley, and that we should also consider any wider impact on services like our green spaces. And I'm assured that the impact on this is not significant. With regards to Farnham, I've considered the detailed officer reports and the business cases that Farnham Town Council have put forward, and personally I am supportive of the transfer of the freehold interest of the lands that have been detailed in 2.1.1. I feel they meet the tests that have been set for best value for our residents, and I'm pleased to see in particular that Farnham Town Council is keen to take on so many of the recreation grounds. These are so important for our communities. And I also note that some might be used as options for things like cemetery extensions, which is another, I think, really important consideration for the future. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Keogh. From this point, we'll go through the rest of the tranche that have been recommended, unless there's any other questions on the Farnham tranche at the moment that you would like to go through. So I'm getting no indication there. So next we'll be looking at the principle of transferring the freehold interest of the following property to Hazelmere Town Council, noting the explanation in paragraph 615 of the report at why this transfer represents best value for the residents and businesses of Waverley, and that is the High Lane Recreation Ground and Community Centre. Are there any questions or queries that members might have on that? No, that's okay. We'll move on then. Also, the principle of transferring the freehold interest of the following properties to Godalming Town Council, noting the explanations in the report at paragraphs 616 and 617 about why each of these transfers represents best value for the residents and businesses of Waverley. So that includes Crown Court toilets adjacent to Crown Court car park, the Wilfred Noyce Centre adjacent to Crown Court car park, the Scout Hut adjacent to the Berries Field, the Scout and Guide Hut in Seymour Road, and North Street car park toilets in Farncombe. Have members got any queries or questions on those particular items they would like to raise? Councillor Keogh.
Sorry, Chair, just to clarify, is this just for questions or is this our discussion on the items?
This is the debate as well.
Okay, thank you. In that case, I am supportive of the applications that have been listed for to go to Godalming Town Council. I'd like to note that some of them are already managed day to day by the Town Council, and they've demonstrated that they can manage them very well and have the resources, both money and staff, to do so. The Wilfred Noise Centre, I believe, is managed well under lease to Godalming Town Council, and the Crown Court toilets have recently been refurbished by them and have actually received national recognition at the National Loo of the Year Awards, winning a Platinum Award and being in the top 20 in the country. So I think we can be assured that they are taking very good care of these assets now and will continue to do so in the future.
Thank you, Councillor Keel. And I can also see that significant investment has gone in from Godalming Town Council that they've secured into the Wilfred Noise Centre over the years, at 1.3 million, and also Crown Court car park toilets as well, which was something like 230,000 as well of capital investment. We will then, if you've got no further questions on that particular tranche or any other items you'd like to raise, we'll move on then to the next items in that list. So this will be the principle of transferring the freehold interest of the following properties to Ewhurst Parish Council, noting the explanations in this report at paragraph 6.18 about why this transfer represents best value for the residents and businesses of Waverley, and that is Ewhurst Cricket Club. Have we got any particular points we'd like to raise on that at all? Queries or questions? I might just add then some information myself on that one. The Ewhurst, obviously there's a lease to Ewhurst Cricket Club. It's used by very much used by the community, and an expanding cricket club that I'm aware of, and also the Ewhurst Parish Council are very near to the cricket club and probably are best placed to provide sustainable and service maintenance to this particular area, and also maintain this for the community in the future. Obviously, they also, as with our other items, each of the organisations, the parish councils, town councils, have precept raising powers, and also many of them have commented on perhaps using SIL or other funding sources as well to support some of these assets as well. So moving forward then, finally, we've got the principle of transferring the freehold interest of the following properties to Chiddingfold Parish Council, noting the explanations in this report at paragraph 619 and 620 about why each of these transfers represents best value for the residents and businesses of Waverley, and that is Coxcomb Recreation Ground and Chiddingfold Village Green. Are there any queries around those particular items, questions, or any items that you'd like to discuss? I'd like to thank Councillor Busby, obviously, for coming along earlier and explaining about the community usage. Obviously, from the reports, we know that these areas are already maintained by the parish council, and you know, it's considered that they are best placed to maintain these going forward and to keep them available to the community. So that's our first tranche. Obviously, we won't go on to the recommendations yet. We're just going to go through the particular items. In making our decision as well, we need to consider tranche one of the transfers as well. And as Councillor Keel has mentioned earlier, the impact on the grounds maintenance service, which is outlined in your report at 6.41. Obviously, we also have details of historic spend on these assets, income data as well, and the budget impact as well to the council, which is all contained within Appendix 1 to this report. From what the report says, the impact on the grounds maintenance service at this time is minimal, with a net budget loss of £1,000 arising from tranches 1 and 2 combined. And so this impact is not considered to be material by officers. Has anybody got any comments at all, or questions, or any items of debate on the impact of the grounds maintenance contract of those particular items that we've just gone through? Councillor Keel.
Nothing in particular. I would just like to echo your comments that I feel like that the impact on grounds maintenance is minimal, and therefore we can sort of proceed with the ones that have been recommended for transfer.
Thank you. So next part of the report we'll be looking at is the ones that have not been recommended for transfer, which again I'm proposing to look at those one by one. So we've already covered the Brightwells Green one, which we've requested, when we get to the recommendations, perhaps we'll look at, we'll look at deferring that particular item. So the first one on our list for not recommended for transfer is the Walmer Hill Recreation Ground and Pavilion in Hazelmere. Officers are of the opinion that this site is not suitable for freehold transfer under the CAT policy because it is not compliant with CAT criteria. Whilst providing community use, the site produces a significant annual net income generated from sports pitch hire, and there has been substantial capital and grant funding in the site in excess of £1 million, with further investment being made to the existing pavilion. In addition, officers consider the asset also has strategic value as it is adjacent to an existing County Council-owned sports facility, which Waverley Borough Council run. That's the Edge. And they consider that there will be benefit in both parcels of land being held by one entity under local government reorganisation, which could support the delivery of improved leisure facilities that might not be achieved if they remain under the ownership of two entities. There are also concerns raised over the access to the site, and I know that we have heard from the clerk some conversations that have gone on about that access to the site. We don't have that information in front of us this evening, can I just say. However, we do know that should the site come under one entity, that particular issue would be resolved, as they would have control over the whole site. There's also residential property development on the site, and this is not suitable for transfer within the report. Also, the transfer would need approval of the Football Foundation due to their investment in the site, and the site is quite protected currently under Fields in Trust, and it is protected as a green space under the Hazelmere Neighbourhood Plan as well. With that information that's taken from the report, and except for the Neighbourhood Plan bit, I'll open it up to the floor. Councillor Keel.
Thank you very much, Councillor Townsend. I've considered the report in the pack very carefully and the officer assessment of this request. I feel it's important we make the right decision. This is an important piece of land and the best interests for the future of it and the activities which take place on it. From my perspective, from reading all the information I have in front of me at the moment, I feel that it being part of a site with proper access, being considered as one site, would be better for its long-term preservation. For me, I feel that this application needs a bit more information in terms of financial information and the complexity of the site, the access to the sites. In my personal opinion, I feel we might be best to defer this particular item. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Long?
I'd just like to say that I would agree with what Councillor Keel has just said.
Okay, thank you. I know there has been some conversation about the current lease arrangements as well on the site, and that has been something I know that we have queried, and also the involvement of the Walmer Hill Sports Association going forward. And perhaps I could ask Claire if she would add some further information to those points. Thank you.
Certainly. It's just to set out really the current operational arrangements of some of those pieces of land. And of course, the site next door that you're talking about is the Edge Leisure Centre, which is owned by Surrey County Council, and which there are current lease negotiations ongoing with Waverley Borough Council. The Edge Leisure Centre is operated by Waverley, but there is a service level agreement in place for the Edge plus the sports pitches, the AstroTurf pitch and the 3G pitch, to be operated by Walmer Hill Sports Association, which is separate to the pavilion and the lease of the pitches at the top of the site, which, although it's expired, there is security of tenure there for the Walmer Hill Sports Association as well. So at the moment, the site's very fragmented and there are different arrangements in place, which doesn't lead to good management of that site, albeit there is one entity really providing the operational day-to-day support.
Thank you. Thank you. That's provided some further probably questions perhaps arising from that. Okay. I know that Councillor Keel suggested we haven't moved the motions yet, but which we will do in a moment. So can we come to that in a moment, Councillor Keel, your suggestion for a deferral?
Oh, yes, of course. It wasn't a recommendation at this stage. I was just giving my opinion.
Thank you. Thank you. Right, moving on to Churchill Garden, which is in Church Road, Hazelmere. Again, this site was again recommended not to be transferred. It was purchased by the Housing Revenue Account for housing on the site, and the asset has not been recommended for transfer due to potential residential development opportunity. And at the moment, I don't see that we have any formal assessment of that potential. Am I right on that? That's correct. Thank you. Thank you. So we don't have any formal assessment on that. Has anybody got any other anything else to add on that? Councillor Kew.
Thank you. I think on this one, I've obviously assessed the report, and I'm you know, I think it's really important that we take into account the biodiversity of the area and the opportunities for you know, that kind of community space. But ultimately, I would need to be assured that the impact on the housing revenue account is understood, given that the site was purchased by the HRA for the purposes of social housing. So I feel we need a bit more information on that one.
Councillor Long.
Yep, having assessed the content of the report, I also felt that we need to have a better understanding on the impact on the HRA of that one.
Yes, I think it's been clear that it has been was purchased some time ago, and the potential hasn't been achieved at this particular moment in time. So perhaps we will think about that when we come to our recommendations. Okay, then we move then on, if members are okay to move on, we move on to the Berries Field in Godalming, and officers have not recommended that this asset be transferred, as they state that it is required for strategic planning or redevelopment regeneration purposes, although they do state the council does not plan to develop this site specifically. It is located in the centre of a large town centre parcel of land, with the Berries building on one side and the Crown Court car park on the other. Therefore, a freehold transfer of the Berries Field could impact future opportunities of the neighbouring land. There is also mention of the site to provide potential for biodiversity net gain or carbon offsetting or other environmental enhancement schemes. Obviously, the Godalming Town Council have provided a comprehensive business plan. There are several community uses outlined within that. I open it up to the floor to discuss, debate what we think of that at this moment in time. Thank you, Councillor Long.
Yes, I have to say that I'm minded reluctantly to disagree with the officer's report on this one. My concern is with the discussion about potential for development. I think we had a very strong steer from the community that that's not what the community wants there. This is a principal recreation ground in the centre of Godalming, which hosts many community events. Godalming Town Council is already deeply involved in the day-to-day running of it. it's the premises licence holder, coordinates many of the events there, and is already the provider of many of the essential services, the water and the electricity. Looking also at the costs and income relation to the berries, it currently is a cost of just over 7,000 to Waverley and brings in an income of 1,162. At this point, I would be minded, my instinct is that we should agree to that transfer.
Thank you, Councillor Long. I'm also quite swayed by the use by the school and the fact that the school has very little outdoor space. That's Moss Lane School. There is a whole list of community events that has been included within the information that the evidence provided by Godalming Town Council, and I think the local management and their in-house team that they got already would be very well placed to look after this asset. And taking in the round as well of we will be making a decision in a moment based on the other assets that have been applied for within that Crown Court area as well, that we might want to consider that when making our final decisions. And also, I have had a look as well, if we were minded at all to consider going against the officer's recommendation on this one, that the obviously the loss of income as you've outlined and also the cost to the council, there appears to be very little impact on the grounds maintenance service. And so I don't think that would have a large impact on the team if we're taking it within the round. Okay, if Councillor Keel.
Thank you very much. I have also considered the officer report in great detail, but I completely echo the words of my colleagues this evening. I should add to my initial comments that this space falls within my borough ward. Sorry, that was a thing I meant to mention at the beginning. The Berries Field is a loved and valuable community space in the heart of Godalming, used frequently for large and small community events. The local school, as Councillor Townsend reminded us, and is managed day to day by the Town Council. I don't feel that a long-term management arrangement is appropriate for this site, given the resource required by Waverley to do this. Creating that landlord-tenant relationship would increase governance and costs. It would also limit the ability for the Town Council to manage the site to its best ability. So I feel that transferring it would reflect the reality of the situation where we minded to do so. Also, with the other transfers, as Councillor Hansen mentioned, that we're being recommended to make to Godalming Town Council this evening, it would enable decision-making about all the adjacent sites by GTC as the one landowner, simple and cost-effective. So I'm minded to disagree with the recommendation of officers for these reasons and suggest that we consider a freehold transfer when we come to discuss that in a moment. And I think this is the best way to future-proof this huge community asset. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Keel. We'll move on then to the final item, which is the Glebe Community Centre. This is part of the HRA, the Housing Revenue Account, and it's in Ewhurst. Officers are recommending that the asset is required for strategic planning or redevelopment / regeneration purposes. As I said, this is an HRA site. There has been no capital expenditure on the glebe or income from it. Ewhurst Parish Council currently have a lease on this property, so they already manage it, and Waverley, as you can see from your papers, receive a peppercorn rent. The Parish Council have carried out and are carrying out substantial improvements to the building, and as they have mentioned within the report, that they run it as if they own it at the moment. We have got quite a comprehensive maps and within the report as well, which show that I think it's about on page 570 of your report in particular, which is the ownership map, which does indicate that a number of properties within the red line boundary have already been sold, and including one adjacent to this site. And right to buy could obviously erode this further in the future. fragment this particular area. So that's something that we might want to perhaps consider. And also, I have, if personally with this particular site, it is being run as a community asset, although it's part of the HRA, and obviously that's a consideration to take into account. But it is a community building. It's being run by the parish council. It is on the edge of the actual site in question, and it is a very valued community asset as well, and it meets all of the policy requirements for maintaining that for the community, and somebody being and sustainably maintaining that as well. I would be open to what other members of the two of you think. Councillor Keel.
Thank you very much. Only to echo what you're saying, really, having considered the merits of the case and the arguments made in the officer report, I do feel that this one, perhaps I would be minded to consider going against the officer recommendation on this one. I feel that it's quite clear the parish council are running this already. The housing around it is partially owned by Waverley, but there's a sizable number of private owners who have utilised right to buy, and presumably more in the future may do so. So I kind of feel like we should try and safeguard this community asset within that area. Thank you.
Councillor Long.
Yes, I would agree with what Councillor Keel has just said. The fragmentation of the ownership around it feels quite compelling to me, and I think the transfer would enable it to be safeguarded as a community asset in the ownership of the organisation that is currently effectively doing that.
Thank you. And whilst considering that, again, thinking of the grounds maintenance service, as the maintenance is, there's no impact at the moment. There will be no impact as the maintenance is undertaken by another organisation arranged by the housing service. So in the round, thinking about the grounds maintenance, that doesn't have any impact. So are there any particular, any other items you'd like to go back to? Any other points you'd like to make at all at this time? Okay, then I'd like to just go to the recommendations, and just to state that as Farnham Town Council have requested that their application in respect of Brightwell's green space in Farnham is deferred. I'm not moving a determination of that particular application. I'm therefore moving recommendations 2.1 and 2.2 with an amended recommendation at 2.1.6 and amended 2.3. So that, and I'll read them out. Just let me go to my report as well. Thank you. Sorry, members, we're just having a discussion about the best way to make these. So first of all, I'm just going to go into the agenda because I think it would be best if it just take it from there. Bear with. Thank you. So if we take the recommendations, sorry, they're outlined on page 265 of the main report. And if we just take the first recommendation, which is 2.1.1, the principles of transferring the freehold interest of the properties that we went through, which are all listed there, to Farnham Town Council, 2.12, Hazelmere Town Council, 2.13, Godalming Town Council, and 2.14, Ewhurst Parish Council, and 2.15, which is Chiddingfold Parish Council. Do you want me to list out the various ones within those tranches? These are the ones that were approved for transfer, first of all. Okay, and to delegate, and then 2.2, which is a delegation of authority to the Joint Assistant Director for Assets and Property in consultation with the Joint Strategic Director for Finance and Resources to negotiate and complete the terms for transfers of the above listed properties at best consideration. If we take that tranche first and those recommendations first, then we can move on to putting forward different recommendations. So first of all, can I have somebody to, I'm proposing those, can somebody just second those?
Happy to second, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Keel. And you to, can we just take a vote on that tranche? Is that okay, Claire?
You should really do it as one.
Okay, well, we'll wait then to take that vote. So Councillor Keel, you're seconding then on the whole of the different tranches there and the ones that have been put forward. So then we've got some alternative recommendations then for the items that were put forward in 2.3 that and so those items were the ones for we had an alternative proposal to defer the Walmer Hill Recreation Ground and Pavilion in Hazelmere, to clarify the point on the easement, point on the financials, the income. We also were, in order to fully understand the implications of the different leased areas and to provide Hazelmere Town Council to duly consider those particular different lease arrangements on there. I'll just clarify with Claire if we need any more information on that. Thank you. Church Hill Gardens, the proposal, I'm proposing to defer that. Have I got a second of that as well?
Happy to second.
Thank you. We are proposing to defer that pending a formal assessment of the potential for the HRA housing on that site that we don't have. So it has been a site that's been owned for a while, so it would be good to have that information in order to be able to make the decision of the potential. So that's the reason to defer the Churchill Gardens. The Berries Field, we're proposing to go against the officer's recommendation and to put that forward to Godalming Town Council. And the reasons for that is we feel that the asset is a community asset. It is important to protect that asset going forward as a recreation field, a community asset due to the number of uses. It does not impact the grounds maintenance contract, the grounds maintenance team rather. And we feel that Godalming Town Council would be best placed to manage that asset, and also with the adjoining assets that are going forward as well. Can I have a second of that one as well?
Happy to second.
Thank you, Councillor Long. And then finally, the Glebe Community Centre, which is the HRA. We've got was an alternative recommendation for that one to transfer that asset to Ewhurst Parish Council based on the current use of the building, maintaining that as a community asset going forward, and also keeping it for the for the community and the sustainability of the parish council being able to maintain that particular asset. Again, it doesn't have any impact on the grounds maintenance team. Can I have a seconder for that one as well?
Happy to second.
Thank you, Councillor Long. I'll just check that if we need any further information before we move forward. Sure, just to confirm, so we're making alternative recommendations, but we are making the decisions on those this evening. Taking all those recommendations, taking the decision on those that are all outlined in your report, the alternative recommendations that we've put up forward, so we're taking those all together, and so perhaps we could have a show of hands if you agree with those. That's unanimous. Thank you very much. I don't think there's any further. So we can perhaps have a 5-minute break and reconvene. That will allow the other councillors to rejoin us. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you, councillors Townsend, Keel and Long for dealing with that last item. In which case then we go back in the papers to the capital strategy report. And can I ask Councillor Merriweather, and I'll give him 2 minutes because he's just getting his laptop out, to introduce the item. No, you Councillor Merriweather.
Right, thank you, Leader. This is the capital strategy report. The capital strategy 26-27 brings together the council's detailed policies, procedures and plans relating to capital expenditure, capital financing and treasury management activity. It also incorporates the treasury management strategy, including the prudential indicators and the asset investment strategy, which focuses on land and buildings. The core capital strategy addresses what we invest in. The asset investment strategy ensures that our real estate assets deliver best value and outcomes that align with our corporate priorities and service needs. The treasury management strategy ensures our monetary assets, our deposits and investments are funded and managed safely. It also gives an overview of how associated risk is managed and the implications for future financial sustainability. This 26-27 strategy updates the one approved last year with current values, but with no other substantive changes. They've also been prepared on an as-is basis and will be subject to impacts from local government reorganisation from 27-28. Finally, just in that regard, can I draw members' attention to prudential indicator number 3, starting at paragraph 2.19 of the Treasury Management Strategy. Waverley has no external debt in its general fund, and the external debt in our HRA at around £140 million is wholly attributable to what's left of the £189 million mortgage we were forced to take out to essentially buy back our own council housing stock in 2012. Waverley has the lowest debt and the strongest balance sheet among all of the councils that will be merging into West Surrey, and I'm very proud of that, and I want to thank the team for all their hard work.
Thank you very much, Councillor Merriweather. I think this is your 7th budget now as portfolio holder for finance, and you are definitely the longest serving portfolio holder for finance in Surrey, and it very much shows in how Waverley's budget stands compared to many others. And I would also like to take the opportunity to thank all of our finance team, every single one of you, for all the work that you've done to put into every single part of this budget, to get to this, to be in the position that we are in this far down the line is frankly miraculous, but also down to the professional expertise of all of you. Right, are there any other comments on the capital strategy component? It's probably the most straightforward of the 3 budget components before you tonight. Can I just confirm? No, there's no other speakers on the item, so in which case I'm happy to propose it. Councillor Merriweather, are you happy to second?
Very much so, yeah.
In which case, can I have all those in favour of the recommendations as outlined in agenda item 8? Thank you very much, everyone. Item 9, the housing revenue account budget setting, which I believe is with, again, with Councillor Merriweather to introduce, and I do have at least one registered speaker, so Mark.
Thank you, Leader, and I'm quite sure Councillor Rivers will want to chip in as well. So the council owns and manages 4,777 council homes, which it rents to eligible tenants or for which it holds the freehold. They are funded through the housing revenue account, the HRA, which is a ring-fenced account that records all income and expenditure related to the council's role as landlord, and that I'll return to shortly. This ring fencing makes the HRA entirely independent of our general fund operations, which are in part funded, not least by our council taxpayers. The HRA plans for the long term over a 30-year horizon, and in this current year, 25-26, we commissioned an external review of this business plan and contracted consultants to prepare and analyse it. And I'm pleased to report the plan shows a healthy picture with appropriate reserves and investment headroom. However, as I said, the rentals paid by our tenants pay for everything in the HRA, not only its operation and the repair and maintenance of their homes, but also for the refurbishment and upgrade of our houses and the development of entirely new ones. Our tenants not only fund their own homes, but ensure that new and refurbished quality homes are being created for future generations. We're not allowed to increase rents by more than CPI plus 1%. For 26-27, the September 2025 CPI was 3.8%, and adding the additional 1% results in a proposed rent increase of 4.8%. This complies with the rent standard, which is set by the regulator of social housing and governs how registered providers set and increase rents for social housing. In setting the rent increase for next year, we have considered very carefully the views expressed by our tenants, including through the Landlord Services Advisory Board, and the impact a lower rent rise would have not only on our ability to deliver the service, but also to refurbish and build new homes and under capital programs that the business plan describes. We do believe that a lower increase would have an adverse long-term consequence on those plans, a consequence that outweighs the short-term benefit that a lower increase could have. Indeed, the proposed capital programme budget has been increased to £13.7 million to include catch-up work started last year on maintaining existing homes. We have at least, though, been able to contain the increase in fees and charges to only 4%. Paragraph 6.15 of the report describes the government's proposals for rent convergence for social housing, which is intended to gradually align rents on existing social rent homes with the official formula rent used to calculate what similar homes would cost. We estimate that the council's current rent levels are below that formula rent by approximately £1 to £2 per week on top of the standard rent increase. Finally, this HRA business plan has been prepared again on an as-is basis and will be subject to impacts from local government reorganisation from 27-28. In West Surrey, we will be joining 3 other authorities, Guildford, Runnymede and Woking, that also have HRAs. We do, though, expect that the HRA ring-fencing arrangements that currently insulate our tenants and their homes from the more widely publicised financial pressures the new unitary will face will remain in place. Thanks again to the team, to the HRA team and everybody who's done so much to put this together, and I commend the recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Merriweather. Councillor Rivers, do you want to go next or shall I? Councillor Rivers.
Thank you, Paul. I just want to cover off 1 or 2 things that happened at the last LSAB meeting in January. For those that are not aware, the Landlord Services Advisory Board is an executive working group that is made up or is comprised with councillor members of this council, and also members of the tenants panel. Now, at the last LSAB meeting held on the 29th of January, item 9 on their agenda was the same as the item 9 on our agenda. And the LSAB was asked to consider the report's recommendations, which is going before the executive tonight. The tenants panel members of the board requested that the executive consider a rent increase to match inflation, but not to set it at the maximum permitted increase of 1% over inflation. Now, at this meeting, the board was not able to debate this in depth. Candice Keat, head of finance, was not present as she was unwell, and 2 senior councillors on the board were also unable to attend, so I did not bring it to a vote. However, this request was considered at this morning's executive briefing. Now, the LSAB does understand that rental income is the primary funding source for the ring-fenced HRA, which directly supports the delivery of core landlord services, investment in existing homes, and the delivery of new affordable housing. Dropping rent by 1%, we understand would result in a loss of the order of 12 million over the HRA 30-year business plan, which of course in the normal run of things would be a major inhibitor to the council's ability to fund planned capital investment and ongoing stock condition works, building safety improvements, decarbonisation and compliance with the Decent Homes Standard. Our tenants are of course naturally concerned that they do not have the next 30 years with Waverley Borough Council to look forward to, as in April next year, our housing comes under the control of West Surrey Unitary. But I am assured that we will be able to discuss these concerns in depth at our next board meeting, which will be at the end of February. It is interesting, maybe just to me, to note that 20 years ago, our tenants chose to trust Waverley as their landlord of choice, rather than to accept at that time this council's recommendation to transfer our homes to a housing association. Different times, pre-ring-fenced HRA. But this council is grateful for this trust placed in us then and since, and we will continue to do our best to deliver on that trust. Thank you.
Yeah, and thank you, Councillor Rivers. And just to also confirm, officers have been asked to prepare a briefing to the LSAB on all the issues that they have raised, in particular assurances on what we can give assurances on in regards to the unitary and how the housing revenue account of the new West Surrey unitary will function. There are obviously, as has been said, a number of areas where it's impossible to give complete reassurance because, of course, we need to, there are elections to the new West Surrey, and actually being a group of political people that are in favour of good quality social housing for residents is not a universally accepted concept. It is, however, something that every single person in this room I know cares deeply about, and those of us who were standing in that election will, I'm sure, be making clear. Right, in which case, Jerry, I think you've registered to speak. Just a reminder that it's 3 minutes on these, a lot of the, as the Constitution says, but also due to the time, Jerry.
Thanks very much. Well, what Councillor Rivers has said obviously is mainly correct. Of course, it wasn't pre-ring fenced HRA when I went around leafleting all the tenants twice back in 2005, and the tenants decided not to stay with the council, and it was not to do what the council suggested, and so I was at loggerheads with the executive, and I think I am again, because the tenants have made it perfectly clear through the Healthy Home Strategy update, which came out before Christmas. The priority is affordability, and that means not putting up rents any higher than they have to be and putting them down if you can. Well, putting them down, I think everybody accepts, is going to be a very difficult thing to do, but we can afford to. We can't crystal ball gaze as to what's going to happen. We can only affect things now. We can be good to our tenants now. We can listen to them now. The documents that at the last LSAB meeting did have on that, and our documents at the end of a big wad of papers here today, do also refer to tenant involvement, increasing tenant involvements. How are we going to do that if we just ignore them? When they come in and their representatives tell you what the tenants are saying, and we're just going to ignore them, how are we going to have tenant involvement? Why do we bother having the tenants panel there if we're just going to ignore them? And it isn't absolutely necessary that we put the extra 1% on top of inflation. The inflationary rise is enough in itself at nearly 4%. We know full well that the council tenants are being made to pay for the council's mistake of overpaying for the purchase of M & Company at 69 High Street, and we know from last night's meeting roughly what that amount is. That would be enough to put tenants' rents down. If that was if that money was, if the difference was
I'm
put
going to
back.
stop you if you introduce demonstrably false information. Please carry on, but that
Well,
is
okay. Well, if we're looking at half of the difference between half of the 1.4 million pounds, which was said last night, that amount of money there is certainly going to be something like 3.5–4%, isn't it? Something like that, equivalent to a 3.5 or 4% rise. And of course, you know, I understand the impacts.
Councillor Hyman, 1% of the HRA is something like £12 million on its own. So your statement is demonstrably false, but please carry on. But that's my last warning.
I think officers might confirm that the 1% rise is about £200,000. I think that's the case, but if you ask them to confirm that, but we can discuss this another time. I think I've made the point clear. It can be paid for if the general fund, if we decide that the general fund should not make tenants pay for the mistake, and obviously.
Right, Jerry, that's enough. I'm not letting this be a forum just to spout misinformation. I'm sorry. Please, can you stop the microphone?
Well, I'll have an apology when you get it from the officers. Okay. Thanks then, Lena.
Right, there we go. Okay, I'm going to first of all probably bring in Mark. We'll try and deal with some of the issues there. But I also just want to say one other thing as well. The tenants panel are incredibly valued contributors to all the things that we do. But I would just state, and I think, Jerry, this is something I'm sure you would understand as well. If I were to implement every single suggestion from a resident, not only would I find it impossible most of the time because it will be outside my powers, but I'd also most of the time be doing at least 2 contradictory things a day. Because what one person thinks is the best idea, another person will think is the worst idea. One person will think it's great, another thinks it's terrible. So it's not possible always to just implement whatever somebody says when they come in. But that also doesn't mean we aren't listening and just ignoring people. That's absolutely not true. And I would suggest you have a conversation with the tenants panel members, who I am quite sure would confirm that perception themselves, that we don't just completely ignore them. So I'm going to go to Mark and then I'll come to other speakers.
I'm going to start by recognising the work that Jerry put in to enabling us to buy back, or whatever you want to call it, our own council housing, and for that we should all be grateful, not least our tenants. I'm afraid that does not give him the right to misrepresent what's going on at 16 High Street. I will come to that later on. But the unrealised gain or loss on the residual land value, which I'll explain later on, there's no evidence at all to support the notion that we overpaid for the site, or we've misallocated the cost that we paid between the general fund and the HRA. The HRA is ring-fenced, and it is mathematically incorrect to suggest that whatever that unrealised gain or loss on the residual land might be will have the slightest impact on the rents that are paid by the tenants. The tenants will pay 70% of the open market rent, regardless of the value of the land that the houses are built on. So that I'm afraid needs to be nixed. Finally, in terms of affordability, affordability is not just ring-fenced to the rents that our tenants are paid. If we put a tenant into a property, for example, that is insulated properly, that has energy efficiency in there, they will more than recoup whatever increase in rent that may happen through lower energy bills. If we build homes for them in the town centre, their commute costs to work may be a lot lower than if they're out in the boondocks. There are so many more dimensions to affordability than simply a 1% or a 0.5% increase in the rents. I am not saying that a rent increase is difficult. But what I am saying is that in the context of all the other stuff we're trying to do, decent, affordable homes in the right place, you have to take everything in that context. It is not fair to cherry pick what you don't like, or frankly what you want to make up.
Okay, I think I've got House Townsend next.
Thank you, Mark, for clarifying that point. I find it, extremely unhelpful when councillors come on and start spouting figures with no basis, or start spouting figures, or evidence that they haven't produced either on in the meeting last night. It's really unhelpful. If you are going to provide evidence, it needs to be provided in written form so that all councillors have an opportunity to scrutinise it as well. I think that we are an extremely responsible landlord. I'm very proud of the fact that we have got our own housing, and also echo all of the comments that have been said by Councillor Rivers as well. And we do take our tenants' voices into account. We have a very strong team on that LSAB. A lot of them have been on there for quite a while. They know the challenges that we face. They know what we want to invest in those properties. We want to bring them up. They want them to be better, and we want to try and keep their rents as low as possible. And let's face it, we have extremely low rent. Social rent is the cheapest form, and of rental in this area, and we try and keep that as low as possible. But we do want to have a capital investment programme. We do want to make their homes better. We want to make their bills lower. We're a responsive landlord as well, as it says within the report about the service charges. As soon as we know that the increase in energy bills is not going to be so high, we reduce things. We're always responding to events quickly as possible, but also maintaining that dialogue with our tenants. But we have to appreciate that we cannot always, we can't always reduce rents and continue to improve our properties. And I think it's really important that we celebrate the work that our housing team do as well, and the fact that we are providing the cheapest form of rental houses open to residents in our communities. Because let's face it, people do have huge rents, 100% market rents, very high, and we provide homes for all sorts of people within our borough. And I think any criticism of decisions made, it's not easy making these decisions. I can assure you, it's very tough. We don't take them lightly. We do try and accommodate everything we possibly can. We read hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pages before we come to this place and just talk. We have made we've gathered a lot of information. We've considered a lot of things, and don't come to this decision lightly at all. Thank you.
Right, under the circumstances and the time, I'd like to move this one to a conclusion. Mark, I assume you're happy to propose these recommendations, and I'm happy to second.
Very happy, yeah.
In which case, can I have all the are the recommendations set out in the report agenda item 9 agreed? Thank you, everyone. Item 10, the general fund budget setting 26-27. Again, that's for Councillor Merriweather to introduce. I believe there are 2 small amendments on this particular item, and so I will move the recommendations at the end once we've done that. So, Mark, after you.
Very good. So what I'm about to say does not anticipate those amendments, as you'll understand. So our general fund is the resource that empowers us financially to deliver our non-housing corporate strategies. It's almost beyond ironic that for 26-27, this council's last year in existence, the government has finally delivered on its own age-old commitment to set out a multi-year local government finance settlement for the 3 years through to 28-29. The first of its kind in around a decade, providing more certainty for councils that are going to be around in planning and budgeting. The settlement simplifies over 30 funding streams into fewer or more consolidated grants, helping to reduce fragmentation and improve predictability of funding. It includes updated distribution mechanisms to reflect the Fair Funding Review 2.0 consultation, with a redistribution of funding towards more deprived and higher need areas. And in making the settlement, the government projections assume councils will increase council tax to referendum limits, which I'll come back to later, and the government will reset the business rates retention system from April 26-27, recalculating how much business rates local authorities can retain based on updated income estimates and relative need, which is a convenient point to remind everybody that Waverley already only keeps 4% of the business rates it has to collect. For Waverley, this settlement as a whole would have meant a nominal increase of only 0.5% on our core spending power for 26-27, including the assumed council tax rises. Apart from Woking, which is in special measures, this is the lowest increase in West Surrey. It's only because of our prudent budgeting in prior years, which anticipated some of this impact, that we've been able to absorb that real terms cut. And meanwhile, we still face intense other underlying financial pressures. These include inflation, of course, which remains consistently higher than forecast and will add a further £1.5 million to our gross general fund cost base. Other unavoidable budget adjustments, totaling about £895 million as detailed in the report, include an increase of £402,000 to our homelessness prevention budget, and other cost growth, again as detailed in the report, with a net impact of £338,000, is at least mostly contained to temporary two-year spends. Against this, in mitigation, we do have savings, efficiencies and other benefits, including additional service income of about £548,000, which includes an uplift to our leisure centre income. £409,000 of additional commercial income is proposed to come from fees and charges, including car park income. And I know that Councillor Fairclough has already spoken on this earlier in his response to overview and scrutiny, and I'm quite sure he may have more to add, so I'm not going to dare anticipate that now. But since we started our collaboration with Guildford, the net financial savings have risen to over £1.2 million per year at current prices. Now, because of LGR, we do not expect that to be sustained, even if it can be so, whether it can be identifiable. And so we are removing some of that growth from our forecasts. But even then, the collaboration has been and continues to exceed its target of delivering over £700,000 per year of annual savings. And so I'm proud that in this context, our MTFP forecasts not just 1, but 2 years worth of balanced budgets. We're also increasing our revenue contribution to our capital programme, which now totals £6.5 million for the year, on top of the £14 million of budgeted scheduled for the year for already pre-approved schemes. Members will also see in the report detailed updates on our usable reserves, which remain strong and continue to provide resilience against financial risk and volatility, including the financial stress of transitioning to the new unitary. Unlike others, like Surrey County Council, we haven't had to contrive financial resilience by dual purposing reserves that have been earmarked for other specific purposes. Finally, can I just return to council tax and address the ONS committee recommendation, which is based on the Q2 25-26 financial outturn report, which forecasts staff vacancy savings above expectations. The supply of suitably qualified staff is a nationally recognised problem. In our sector, where it routinely takes longer to fill vacant posts and where we so often have to resort to more expensive agency staff at the points of most stress. Our staff vacancy savings are net of those higher agency costs. On a non-financial level, this is not sustainable in the long term and certainly doesn't reflect reduced service need. Recruitment remains a priority in a number of areas, and given our financial constraints, we also look at non-financial elements such as flexible working to attract staff. We budget for specific roles, and these needs are tested during the annual budget challenge board round. Given our experience, though, We do also pre-budget for some staff vacancy savings. And for this year that we're in now, 25-26, that was £200,000. It's perfectly reasonable to ask whether, with our last ever budget brewing, we should be budgeting for a much higher level of staff vacancy savings than our current draft proposal, which is £246,000 for next year, with any additional saving being used perhaps to fund alternative spends or uses. And we have considered a range of options, of which council tax is only one. But we can't escape that the vacancy savings are only timing differences, not absolute ones. Those timing differences come at a higher cost if they're filled with temporary agency staff. We have other known risks, and in the current climate have to consider unknown risks, which it would be imprudent, if not irresponsible, to bet against. So on that basis, I'm very proud to present the budget, and I would just like, again, to express my thanks to the entire finance team, who once again have delivered in an exceptional time frame under very stressful circumstances. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. I cannot stress enough the stressful circumstances that this budget has been done under. And whilst I'm surprised to say it quite this way, it's nice that I didn't have to have a debate about needing, for example, a medium-term financial plan, which is something that Surrey County Council neglected to do until forced into it by the opposition, or should I say by the opposition that actually oppose the administration at Surrey. On that note, I think there are two amendments that we're likely to be proposing, and I'm going to take those before I take Councillor Hyman's intervention. I believe the first adjustment to the papers is from Councillor Fairclough.
Yes, thank you, Leader. I'd like to propose a minor, what I term cosmetic change to the car park charges this evening. It arises from our evaluation of the pre-Christmas £1 from 1 PM offer that ran in Farnham car parks. This proposal would run in all car parks in all of our towns where evening charges apply. Within the papers, we refer to a pay to stay for offer to run in the evenings. And to replace that, I now propose the following. It is termed an hour lasts all evening. It applies in those car parks that have evening charges. The offer will run from 5:30 PM on Monday to Thursday. And essentially the offer is to buy a 1 hour ticket and then stay until 8 AM the next morning. In my opinion, this offer is much clearer, and at £1.40, better value. This offer has been this revised offer has been fully costed and will have no effect on the budget. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can I just check everybody is happy to add that to the papers as is?
Agreed.
Thank you. Right, in which case I'm now going to move an additional clause. This would be new clause 2.1.7, which is to agree a 1-year trial for free parking for blue badge holders throughout Waverley to be funded from the reserve established at Supplementary Appendix 6 and subject to an equality impact assessment and a traffic regulation order. I have had more conversations about blue badge parking probably than almost any other subset of parking queries. Waverley are an anomaly in a sense that blue badge parking is not free already within the borough. And one of the reasons that we weren't able to change this has been because of the financial uncertainty over the years. I am confident with the budget being proposed today and the assurances given by our finance team, and I want to thank them specifically for the work they've done in producing the appendices to support how this is funded, to be putting this forward today. I think it rights something that should have been dealt with some time ago, but we're now in such a stable financial position that I feel comfortable righting that wrong, and therefore do propose its addition to the budget as clause 217. Are there any objections to the addition of this new clause? No, in which case we're now debating the adjusted budget with the two amendments that have been put. Councillor Hyman, you've registered to speak. It's 5 to 9, so I'm going to ask everybody to step it up.
Let's be quick. Thank you very much. Yeah, we've had we are a comparatively good, sensible, and careful council compared to others, as Mark has said, and many thanks for all Mark's work, Councillor Mary Weather's work over the years in the role of portfolio holder for finance, because it's a lot of work to do, and very much respect what he's done. Not always perfect, but not too far away, and that's high praise from me, I think. I think we can afford to be nice to residents. We haven't been certainly haven't been the sort of council that has jumped into commercial investment mistakes too much. We've worked hard over the past 20 years to try and keep Waverley sensible quite successfully, and relatively successfully, and very little use of reserves and borrowing. It would be nice if we were now to use perhaps reserves for the one-off costs imposed by government and unitary. That would be able to that would enable us to perhaps give something back to residents, give them some relief whilst it's possible now, because we can't do it at any other time in the future. The EPR extended producer responsibility funding, which we've had £2 million for last year, £2 million for the coming year. I've asked for some further details, haven't received them yet because some of it isn't guaranteed. But that should be for repaying chargeable disposal costs that our residents have already paid for this past financial year. We should be able to give them some of that money back. So I'm very much hoping that between now and the 18th, we'll be able to agree to some more for our residents, particularly in respect of car parking during the daytime for shoppers and for businesses to take advantage of. What Councillor Fairclough's just announced is great for the evening economy. I think everybody would wish to support that, and I also think that. But Farnham's car parking charges historically, because Farnham competes with the Hart and Rushmore, Hampshire areas, Alton, which have lower car parking charges than Guildford and the other areas which the rest of the borough have competing with them. Farnham historically always had lower car parking charges, and that ended some years ago when Farnham got huge rises, quite large rises right across that borough. But I think that differential now going into a unitary needs to be reinstated, and I think it should be done now, because there isn't another time that we can do it. So you heard what Emmy and Ella said, the first speaker, the public speaker this evening, and I'm certainly not the only person who's thinking this way. You can tell from what she was saying, and Farnham residents in general are very keen.
That's time, Jerry.
To ensure we're best placed to compete. So thank you very much indeed, and we'll take it up at council and before. Thanks.
I'm pretty sure I can't think of a single car park in Guildford that is cheaper than Waverley, but possibly in the villages somewhere if you're going to rural parts of Tillingbourne or something like that. But I'd have to double check. Pretty sure that there isn't any though. In fact, in Surrey in general. Right. Any other speakers on the general fund budget? Anybody want to speak on anything that's been said? Mark.
Thank you, Leader. Yeah, the problem with money is that you can only spend it once, and if you're talking about paying a dividend out, if you like, by not increasing council tax or reducing car parking, you very quickly get to a point where you have exhausted your ammunition to actually deal with the stuff that needs to be dealt with, and that includes hiring the staff that we need even more than ever. To deliver our services. The council tax rise that we're proposing is worth £6.32 a year for a Band D council property, and we believe that that benefit is more than outweighed by the costs and the risks that we still face in the months ahead. I'm very grateful for what Jerry said about the way the council's run, my role, when I shouldn't take any credit for it. We're in the position we are because we have been prudent and we have been responsible. And I don't think this is the time to blow that reputation up.
Thank you very much, Councillor Merriweather. Are there any other speakers on the item? Seeing none, then, Councillor Merriweather, I assume you're happy to move the now changed recommendations. I am happy to second them. So can I have all those in favour of the recommendations as they are now amended, laid out at recommendation 10? Sorry, agenda item 10. Thank you very much, everyone. Right, in which case we then move on to item 11, the affordable housing delivery, land to the rear of 69 High Street, Godalming. This is with Councillor Crowe to introduce, I believe.
It is, and I will also try and be quick. Officers, thank you to the team who've done such an enormous amount of work on this for a very long time, culminating in what we see before us. They've now completed the work looking at the different options for the land to the rear of 69 High Street, and the proposal we're bringing forward is to proceed with the delivery of 13 new affordable homes on the site. And as has been mentioned already this evening, all of these would be let at Waverley rent levels, which is 70% of open market value. So tonight we're being asked to approve the allocation of a further 7.5 million-ish from the HRA to deliver these homes and support option 2 as outlined in section 11.2. Alongside this, the team is actively working with Homes England to secure grant funding through the new Social and Affordable Homes Programme 2026 to 36. The funding would help reduce the level of financing required from the council. You may recall that we're already approved as an investment partner. You may recall that from the debate we had about the Chiddingfold houses, where we obtained 600,000. So subject to a decision by council, officers will be continuing to progress the application. The team has been working really closely very hard to ensure that the design dovetails with the commercial development at the front of the site, removing any potential conflicts and introducing efficiencies in the overall design. And the proposed scheme would be a high quality development designed with sustainability and reducing the long-term financial costs for tenants in mind and aligned with the council's commitment to net zero in operation. At ONS last night, concerns were expressed regarding best value. I'd just like to remind everyone that best value goes wider than figures. Here we have an opportunity to build some much needed and lovely flats in our town centre, which will contribute to the ongoing regeneration of the high street, which is frankly priceless. It should also be remembered that the scheme will ultimately be delivering funds back to the HRA in terms of revenue. And then just on that bullet point 4 of the ONS recommendations about using the same money to buy more flats or houses elsewhere, well, maybe so, but we're not talking about elsewhere. We're talking about Godalming, and we're talking about this site in particular. And that is what we have before us tonight.
Thank you very much, Councillor Crowe. I think I was also just to add before I bring in other speakers, and I've got Councillor Keel and Councillor Merriweather. If somebody has got 13 or more flats that are roughly next to each other in a nice clustered place that Waverley could also buy, I'm quite certain that we would also look to buy them. This is not an either or scenario. We have a very large housing register and need more properties. Yeah. And so I think it's our duty to explore every avenue to gain them. I think something that's often missed is that we do need to also to be able to be efficient in our management of those houses. And so having sporadic one house here, one house there is not a particularly efficient way to do the management of social housing. So these are not a zero-sum game when it comes to this. We've got a big housing register and we'll take all the properties we can get. Sorry, Councillor Crowe, your microphone is still on. Apologies. Right, I've got Victoria and then Mark. Victoria.
Thank you very much, Leader. I'm really pleased to see this proposal coming forward for 13 new houses in Godalming Town Centre within my borough ward. Providing housing in our town centres will really benefit not only the people who will live in there in homes that are affordable, sustainable, energy efficient and warm, which will help contribute to our aim of becoming a net zero carbon council, but also the positioning of these homes will help us to regenerate the high street and contribute to the local economy. Thank you very much to Councillor Crowe for all of her work and to our excellent staff who've been working so hard on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Victoria. And Councillor Merriweather, if you wouldn't also mind picking up that point regarding net present value that came up a number of times last night at ONS, I'd be grateful too.
Well, as it happens. So yeah, I'd like to actually focus on responding to the comments that were raised by ONS. What is good, at least, is I think that everybody is now at least comfortable with discussing best value in non-financial terms, and the concept of a not-for-profit provider like ourselves that exists to deliver social value. But it's still challenging to do that when the purely financial metrics that we're used to dealing with, some of us, in the for-profit private sector, do seem to be at odds with our electoral mandate as enshrined in our corporate strategy, and indeed the specific guidance issued by our own government's treasury from parties of many colours, including blue. It's self-evident that the affordable rents we'll charge are below market by 30%. And so on an open market cost base, the return will be below market. That's not something the market does. That's why we're here and why we should assess projects on criteria that recognise that distinction between us and the market. So specific to net present values, I'm resisting the temptation to do that, but I just did. These are calculated based on net income streams discounted back using a target rate. In this report, those income streams are prudent, not least because they exclude monetised social value, which the Treasury has specifically blessed and may be included where it's practicable to do so. We've also used a discount rate at nearly 6%, which is way higher than our actual cost of capital. And of course, we'd also invest for the very, very long term for the primary benefit of our tenants. In purely financial terms, that discount rate explains how, absent social value, we can also present in this report a healthy, positive internal rate of return, positive, healthy payback periods that are within the project life horizon, and a significant annual net contribution benefit to the HRA growing from as early as year 7, and collectively demonstrable financial sustainability. In terms of market values, it should also come as no surprise to property aficionados or anyone else that the residual land values of the site have fallen since it was acquired. At that time, the site was properly appraised by our qualified, independent expert advisors. Since then, the property market and residual land values have buckled under the pressures of COVID and everything since, with stagnant gross development values for planned projects, the cost pressures on materials, labour, capital and profits have only had one way to push, and that's downward onto residual land values. That's affected the private and public sectors alike nationwide and triggered the examples that we see like the Woolmead in Farnham, where the taxpayer, in the guise of Home England, have had to intervene because of that market failure. In terms of alternatives, we can and do buy finished homes all the time, preferably under Section 106 agreements. And again, by definition, buying new homes at full retail price raises exactly the same question when we will only be charging rents at 30% of full market rates. In any event, these opportunities are too few, and we must build where we can, when we can. This is not at any cost. Our strategy still requires that we demonstrate financial sustainability, which is what this proposal does. Likewise, we're also subject to our own planning regulations, and I'm sure that our officers have and will continue to value engineer whatever they can from these homes within those planning constraints. Finally, I would urge, again, that this project be assessed in the context of and on the basis for which we exist. It is financially sustainable. It is self-financing, and it delivers much needed new affordable homes to be paid for by our tenants, not the taxpayer. Even in these extremely difficult conditions, that outcome was and remains preferable to all of the alternatives in the report and suggested at ONS. So thank you very much. Thanks for letting me speak.
Thank you. It was disappointing to see an ONS HRA spend once again being described as taxpayers' spending when it definitely is not. Just so I've understood this in a comment that came out last night, if the council decided to buy 13 properties, it doesn't matter where they are, and it decided to then rent them out in the HRA at 70% market rate, one would imagine their NPV would also be negative.
Yeah, well, an NPV, listen, going back to my prior life, an NPV is a little bit like EBITDA. It's whatever you want it to be. And you can figure these out. The problem with an NPV is you put in an expected discount rate. So if you invest £100 now and you're looking to get £110 in a year's time, you've got a 10% return, an IRR of 10%. If you load that investment up with an expected rate of return of 15 or 20%, you've got a negative NPV. So if you load even a reasonable cash flow up with an unreasonable NPV, you can very easily go from positive to negative and scare the bejesus out of everybody. So these things are open to interpretation. It's very easy to bandy these terms around. The fact of the matter is, from our point of view, in the world in which we live, in which we operate, we have satisfied our corporate objectives and our corporate constraint here of financial sustainability. Thank you.
Okay, because it was likely on the same topic, I don't think I've taken Councillor Hyman speaking on this item. So, Jerry?
Thanks very much. Yeah, well, just to correct one thing, half of the HRA money, approximately, comes from, but that's for all of the HRA money comes from rents. Half the HRA money comes from housing benefit, which is paid for by the taxpayer. Taxpayers do pay. That's fact. So if you please stop saying they don't pay all of it, they pay half of it. And the tenants pay the other, who pay their rents, pay the other half. We don't need to crystal ball gaze on this. We don't need to revisit everything that was said last night. There's another side of the story which we won't hear in the chamber tonight, but which is extensive and on the webcast from last night's overview and scrutiny committee meeting. So if people want to take a look at that, they can. I would just like to have a couple of quick questions, and if I can, the presumption of openness in the public interest dictates that we're entitled to know, the public are entitled to know what the money is being spent on, and their money is going on, and that the land and the current market value of assuming planning permission should be released into the public domain accordingly. That's as a matter of principle, and I wonder whether you confirm whether that information is going to be made plain in the public. Although people have got an idea of what it is, can the numbers be made public, please? But on details of the development that's actually proposed. The proposal shown in the plan, that's on page 276 of the main papers, can you confirm, is that for 2, 3 or 4 stories? Because the ground plan on 276 implies that it might be 3 or 4. It shows 1 disabled parking bay and 1 parking space apart
Jerry,
from
we
that.
aren't here to discuss the planning application. I can't comment on the planning application for the site, only the funding.
Yeah, and it goes to the viability of the site and whether or not this is going to go forward, because I can't imagine we'd grant consent to others for such backland cramming when there's no parking allowance for residents, deliveries, removal lorries, Amazon, or visitors. I think it would be nice to see what plans are there before people have make any decision as to whether they think it's a good idea, because we've seen part of the plans, and I think people should take a look at it. And of course, this is coming to council, so enough said for now. Thanks. It's just that there's more to be said on this. Thanks. Bye.
Right, I'm going to bring in Mark, and then I think we need to wrap this up considering it's 9:15.
Yeah, I tell you, listen, clearly I need to be a little bit more specific. When I did say taxpayers, I did mean council taxpayers. I'm following that logic. Clearly, if we have someone, in one of our houses, who is a nurse or a doctor, works for the NHS, maybe as a soldier or a policeman, I don't know if Councillor Hyman would have a problem with that either, because they're funded by general taxation. They're not funded by council. It just seems that Councillor Hyman, for some reason, just wanted to pick on people who are in receipt of benefits. Don't know why. In terms of
point of personal explanation, Chairman. I never said anything of the sort.
Can you please? Can you firstly, they can't be called as you're not a member of this meeting. Can you please mute the microphone if another interjection occurs? Councillor Merriweather, do you want to finish?
In terms of everything else, those numbers will be released when it's appropriate. Just what I want to say.
Well, I just also want to just comment. I believe the actual purchase value was actually included in the October 2025 report. I think that was discussed last night at ONS. I'm pretty sure it is. We can clarify that, but I'm as near as damn it sure that it was in the public domain in the October 25 papers. Okay. Are there any other speakers on the item in the room? Right, in which case then I will move to the agenda. Sorry, I'll move to the recommendations. So are the recommendations set out at the end of agenda item 11 agreed? And have all those in favour, please show. Thank you very much, everyone. Right, we've done community asset transfers. So on to item 13. It is 9:15. I'm going to ask everybody to keep this as brief as possible for the remaining items, with the possible exception of Cranley Leisure Centre, because there's a number of things to respond to. Right, item 13, community infrastructure levy, issue of neighbourhood sill cap, which is with Councillor Merriweather to introduce.
And I will do very quickly, Leader. The purpose of this report is to highlight an issue relating to the implications of the neighbourhood sill cap and seek approval for a proposal to address that issue. The cap is outside of our control, but we have been struck by how it has adversely affected one of our parishes in particular at Alfold, and we've identified a mechanism to go some way to mitigate that and save the same from happening elsewhere. All as outlined in the report, which I'm not going to detail, are that because this report is self-explanatory, and I would like to add that the recommendations were endorsed by the cross-party Strategic Still Spending EWG during their recent deliberations. So I'm going to leave it there and commend the recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Councillor Murray, you mentioned to me you wanted to speak on both of the SIL items. Is that still the case? Yeah, of course. Yep.
Thank you, Councillor Merriweather. I just had a question when I was reading this, and as I read it, it means that only the spending of the SIL monies which has been collected can be ring-fenced in the general fund to be spent in the parish where it was collected. And obviously, in my mind, principle sounds excellent. But in Alfold, where I looked at it, the new residents who've moved in on this estate, will they not be using Cranley Leisure Centre? Won't they be using other things which are nearby? So if it's only in the parish and it's not a thing, then that money would not be available for the strategic SIL. So, and if I'm a chair of a small parish and I'm not allowed to have the money in the first place because they've said we haven't got the ability to do that. So what we're saying is that, well, we'll hold it for you. And then we're going to make it quite complicated because we're going to create a board for you to come and get this money back. And then we're going to limit it for 5 years. So if you don't get it within 5 years, you're going to get it. It's a bit like your granny giving you your birthday money and then your parents saying, right, I'm going to take it off you and I'm going to hold it here and I'm going to look after it and we're going to let you spend it on something sensible, which we think. I'm a little bit... Yeah, no. So I was looking at it. I'm thinking, well, this is, no one likes that, right? You know what I mean? So, and also, I was, I did speak to the town clerk about this because I want to make sure I got some idea of what it was about. And there's also a concern that it might discourage town councils from carrying out an expensive and time-consuming neighbourhood plan, because that element, which they weren't going to get because they haven't done a neighbourhood plan because it was difficult, then you would argue that, well, we don't need to do one, we'll get the money, later, we'll be able to do that. So I don't know whether you've looked at the repercussions of this carefully enough, and that's, I'd just like to bring those things to your attention. Thank you.
Thank you. My mum did do that when my nan used to give me money. So I sympathise. I sympathise. And it did mean I used the money more wisely in my mother's defence, and I'll admit that now. I've got Councillor Townsend and then Councillor Merriweather. I would just reflect, there's a very interesting version of this discussion I think I should raise with the former chair of Elstead Parish, isn't there, Gemma?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, Allfold is an outlier in this. They have received unprecedented growth. It wasn't allocated in the local plan, and therefore they also haven't attracted the infrastructure or the bids into SIL for the desperate need for infrastructure in that place. They have got a garage with a little shop. They've also got now a cafe, which is lovely, very nice if you're visiting. Please go there. And other cafes probably exist in other areas. But equally, they haven't got the infrastructure. There isn't a school, there isn't a doctor's. The roads could probably do with some investment as well. There are lots of strategic opportunities there. And we are talking about strategic SIL here, which is why there needs to be that governance process of a board. And this has been as a result of long conversations with Allfold. It hasn't just been dreamt up by the executive and implemented. We have spoken to Allfold a lot. We've spoken to them about the board and having that presence, that governance process, because it is strategic SIL, and looking really at trying to, because it is strategic SIL, we'll be looking for strategic deliverers to put in bids to it. So they will be very specific, but equally, in agreement with the parish council as well. So I think it is the best scenario. And whilst I totally agree, and we've had those conversations about, are we treating them differently? Are we doing this, that? But they are the only area, and we've looked across, that have received such unprecedented growth. And that there has to be a way, the flexibility within the strategic SIL pot does allow us to do this. Obviously, we wouldn't be doing it otherwise. But equally, it does mean that we can try, and we didn't have it in the infrastructure delivery plan because we never expected there to be the requirement for infrastructure that there is now. So that this is a way of trying to ring fence some money. It has to be limited because that's the SIL regulations. So that'll be the same for money that will be going to Farnham Town Council. If you haven't spent it in 5 years, we'll be going, oi, you're spending this. So it can be taken back. That's just the regulations, so we know what those regulations are like. But actually, I think this is it's trying to direct infrastructure spending into a place that has got desperate need and has seen unprecedented growth on appeal by the planning inspector. Thank you.
Godalming Town Council took that fear very seriously and seemed to spend our neighbourhood SIL like water, causing a different issue. Mark.
Sorry, I think Liz has said everything I wanted to. The whole point is that this has been, we're not taking anyone's Christmas present away from them against their will. This is the result of a very real problem for Allfold that we have worked with Allfold to try and resolve.
Absolutely. Right. I'm going to bring this one to the recommendations. So are the recommendations set out in the report, agenda item 13, agreed? Agreed. Right. Item 14, Community Infrastructure Levy SIL Exceptional Circumstances Relief, one that certainly can be confused with the subject title, but I will go to Councillor Townsend to introduce the report on SIL relief. So exceptional circumstance relief.
Thank you, Leader. And I'd like to again thank the cross-party review and reform SIL Executive Working Group for their work on this exceptional circumstances relief policy and for putting forward this recommendation for this policy to be adopted. And I'd also like to thank the SIL team for all of their hard work on this. We had some very robust discussions, and also I must stress that this isn't a catch-all policy, and we did obviously talk about that a lot within the working group. The legislation on SIL is clear that this is for truly exceptional circumstances only. It's not part of the householder discretionary review or anything like that, and it should only be applied where there are real challenges around delivery, and the regulations require that such applications can only be made for developments where there is a section 106 in place for the development, and it has been demonstrated through a full viability assessment that the SIL charge would render the development unviable. And viability is the only exceptional circumstance that can be considered. And the council must ensure also that any grant of exceptional circumstances relief is also compliant with the requirements of the Subsidy Control Act 2022 as amended, and relief must not constitute a notifiable state aid. The policy sets out the regulatory tests which would need to be met before any claim can be applied for, and what must also accompany that claim. It also makes it clear that each case will be considered on a case-by-case basis, and that the council retains the discretion to make judgments about the viability of the scheme and determine whether it is considered that the exceptional circumstances apply. The number of such developments, whilst difficult to predict, it is difficult to predict in detail, is likely to be extremely small, as the regulations require that, as I said before, that it only applies in truly exceptional circumstances. There are two options available within the report, and the recommendation that's been put forward is for that option to adopt the policy. So I hope that will be done this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Murray, you asked to speak on this one as well.
Thank you, Leader, if I could, yeah, briefly. So I understand this policy, it's to unlock development, which is proving to meet the housing numbers and obviously development which we all need, and we have our own ones in Farnham where development has stalled, as we all know. So I can actually understand the reason behind it, but I've got some issues about the timing and optics and the look of it in the moment. We all know that we've all had issues over householder SIL charges, and that the council has no discretion over this thing. However, we're now saying that we're proposing giving delegated powers on SIL discretion for big developers and big businesses. So, you know, these people have got consultants and who can prove non-viability. And what we're talking about non-viability, we mean non-profitability. So it seems like we've got a discretional policy for big businesses, but for the little guy, the individual homeowner, the resident, surely you can see how this looks. And that's the only thing I would say, Councillor Townsend, is that we're doing this, and this is how the optics are, and we know how difficult it's been and how traumatic the whole thing's been for the council this year. So that's the only thing I would say about it, and that's how, reading it, this is how it might come across. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm quite happy to answer that, Councillor Murray. And the issues on timing, you know, this has been brought forward because of the local plan and the high housing numbers. And we have to demonstrate to the government, if we are going to try and in any way alter those housing numbers, we have to demonstrate to the government that we have used every single lever available to us to unlock development. If without an exceptional circumstances policy, we are not using every lever that we've got. So that is why this has come forward. The government would expect us, if we were trying to, as I say, reduce down those housing numbers perhaps, to have used this lever. So therefore, that is why it's coming forward. There's nothing to do. I can see that you're making that connection. There is no connection. And I made that perfectly clear. And, you know, in my introduction, because yes, it could be unfortunate timing, but it has to happen now. We have to be presenting to the government that we are making we're taking every opportunity we can to reduce any barriers to development. You know, as much as I do, that we've got about nearly 5,000 planning permissions which are yet unbuilt. And therefore, we are despite that, we are forced to give more and more planning permissions. If we can unlock some of those, which it may not be, because, you know, there are lots of different variables why they may not be being built, but at least if we have this policy in place, we are using one of those levers. So it's really important that we don't confuse the two. And you said something, you know, that we have got no discretion. We use discretion all the time on our SIL enforcement policy. We cannot use discretion on withdrawing liability notices. And I can't say that often enough. I know it's difficult to, you know, perhaps understand, but that is the truth. We are an extremely busy planning department. We're the busiest, probably the busiest planning department in the country outside of London. We have hundreds and hundreds, thousands of applications. And, you know, we deal with a lot of SIL applications as well, which are dealt with well. I'm not saying that we haven't made mistakes, absolutely, which is why we're introduced the discretionary review. But what I am saying is we do need to put that into context of the ones that, you know, that we have got right, and of the enforcement policy, on the enforcement cases that we have used discretion on. You know how much sympathy I have got for the people where, you know, there have been errors made, and we are doing our very best to try and accelerate those reviews and to get people to apply as well. And, you know, it is really important that where mistakes have been made, that we put our hand up and say, absolutely, there was a mistake. And even if we get an independent review that says, no, we felt that you were fine with that, we will still look at that and make sure that we feel comfortable with those decisions and that we feel that we didn't make any mistake. And we will always try to err on the side of our residents at all times. Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. I mean, just one bit I want to add to that. There are times where we have to do things that aren't optically the best for the council, but at the end of the day, we have to be a responsible council looking at the big picture. And LGR means we need to get a local plan in before we cease to exist. So we've got to make sure we can challenge the government on those numbers. I can't think of a single person who thinks the numbers, the housing targets that Waverley have been given, and half of Surrey, in fact, are deliverable. I mean, obviously with 5,000 unbuilt consents, they clearly aren't. If there are ways to reduce that housing target number, we have to take every opportunity to do so. Right, I've got Kika, and then I'm going to call it to the recommendations because it is 9:30.
Oh, it is working. No, it's just interesting because you see, if you take away SIL, who's going to pay for the infrastructure that we are using SIL for? I find that utterly ludicrous, but then I find this government utterly ludicrous. Thanks.
Well, I don't normally defend the current government, but they didn't set any of these rules. I wish they'd crack on and start changing legislation on them, but the last lot did this, and the scheme at Waverley specifically was also set via a planning inspector by the last lot. There's only so much that we have scope to really deal with in our local hats here. It's my hope that West Surrey will have a bit more clout to address some of this more directly with the Secretary of State when it exists. Right, then moving on to the recommendations. So are you all agreed the recommendations set out in the report, agenda item 14? Agreed. Thank you. Right. Item 15, supplementary budget request for Warm Homes Social Housing Fund Wave 3, which is with Councillor Crowe to introduce. No, sorry, my apologies, Councillor Rivers to introduce. I think it was one of the two of you. I'm very happy to do it myself in the interest of time, if you'd like me to.
I think that would be a very good idea, Paul.
So the very short version of this is that we have been successful in our application for Warm Homes Social Housing Fund Wave 3. And there is before you a supplementary budget request to authorise the next stages of that process. I want to thank officers for all of their work again in successfully applying for these bids. We've done fantastically well in applying for the relatively competitive bids that exist on various aspects of social housing and particularly decarbonisation of social housing. So thank you for all the work that you've done. Are there any speakers on the item? In which case, I will propose the recommendations. I believe one of the two of you, Councillor Rivers, will be the seconder. Can I have all those in favour of the recommendations as set out at the report in agenda item 19? Thank you very much, everyone. Right, item 20, motion to council out of hours enforcement policy. Before I go to Councillor Fairclough to introduce this, I am disappointed that there has not been a single member of the opposition who has registered to speak on this item. And one moment. Yeah. I've started it now. We'll do this one and then we'll go back to the others that we've missed. So it's disappointing to see no members of the opposition here, bearing in mind that they brought this motion. Nobody's speaking on it whatsoever. Councillor Fairclough, do you wish to introduce this?
Thank you, Leader. Do I have a seconder?
Yes, that'd be me.
Right, so I'd like to begin by thanking the authors of this report, in particular Claire Upton Brown. This excellent, highly detailed report covers all aspects of the issue, including this council's requirement to adhere to its legal requirements, in particular those noted in point 6.11. I said that given the lateness of the evening, you'll be glad to hear that there is very, very little that I can add to this excellent report. I will, however, draw your attention to the recommendations and our proposed next steps. Firstly, that this issue is kept under review and, should there be any evidence of need in the future, that the matter is revisited. Secondly, it is considered necessary to revisit the content of the enforcement webpage and do some further communication and research with residents on its contents. So why are we making the first recommendation? And here I draw your attention to point 6.5. Last year, we investigated just 26 priority 1 cases. That's around 2 per month, none of which occurred over a weekend, and only 1 related to an alleged breach of conditions on a traveller site. I also refer you to point 6.8. In the 3 years that Waverley did run an informal out-of-office service covering bank holidays and Christmas, we had approximately 1 call per year relating to encampments. 1 per year. All of which were on this council's land, such as car parks, and therefore not a matter for planning enforcement. And since the out-of-office service ceased in 2022, we have dealt with 1 priority 1 case that has occurred out of hours. That was over a weekend, which, when investigated, was not in itself a breach of planning. The costs of providing an out of hours service are detailed on page 15 of the report. As you will see, the cheapest option would cost £109,200. That's £109,200 for a service that has historically dealt with only 1 priority 1 case per year. As this report makes clear, Waverley does not have a major problem with planning breaches relating to encampments that would require an out-of-hours service. Certainly not one that would justify a minimum expenditure of over £1,000 per year. The recommendations are clear and I commend them to this executive. Thank you.
I think that's over £100,000 a year rather than £1,000 per year. You said 1,000, but it's 100,000. It's all good. So as far as I'm concerned, this is a very thorough and detailed report. It's very clear on the recommendations. I was here when, in fact, I was leader when we stopped this version of the service anyway, based on the fact that most of us could remember each individual case every year that this was, there being so few. And clearly there's been no escalation in the number of priority 1s over the subsequent years. Therefore, I cannot in any sense of good conscience suggest that this council goes back to those previous arrangements at the cost of over £100,000 a year with precisely no evidence to justify doing it. Can I therefore move to the recommendation? So do you want to just quickly comment?
Just very, very quickly, because I've been involved in the discussions, been present at the meetings where this was discussed previously, and there's a disparity between the expectations of what our planning enforcement officers should do and what they are actually able to do. It isn't a criminal offence for somebody to carry out, development on land. It isn't a criminal offence. Our officers cannot just go and turf people off land instantly. We don't have that powers. You know, any action that we take is a slow process. We have to gather evidence. The police, on the other hand, do have alternative powers, which we do not have. And that is based on completely different a legal basis, which I won't even, you know, pretend to understand at this point, but they do have powers. So I think we need to be very careful in setting up expectations at all in any kind of enforcement policy that makes it that we can act more quickly. And as has been outlined, you know, the number of cases that we actually have to deal with is extremely low, and we don't want to pretend and exacerbate this, you know, this feeling that we're getting inundated or something, that we've got lots and lots of cases, that we need a service like this. That isn't the case. We don't need a service like this at the moment. Our enforcement officers are really great. They respond even out of hours. You know, you can get hold of planning officers, enforcement officers. They are always available really to, you know, to us. So I think that it's really important to be aware of the problem, but also to be aware of the powers that we have within enforcement.
Keep in mind this was raised predominantly in response by the opposition to a matter that occurred over the border in Guildford, which to be clear was dealt with by our officers within business as usual activities. So again, does not require an out of hours scheme to address. It was clearly dealt with. I was made aware of it, even as someone who wasn't the ward councillor, I was made aware of it by officers on the day when they went and dealt with it. I really don't see the justification. Right, so we're now into, are the recommendations set out in the report agenda item 20 agreed? Thank you. Noting Councillor Keel's confusion that I had turned over an entire page and going back therefore to items that I missed. Item 16 is the procurement pipeline, which is with Mark to introduce.
Thank you, Leader. Yep, so this is the latest of the now regular report since our contract procedure rules were revised in 2024. To require that in respect of any procurement that will result in a key decision, the procurement team obtains executive agreement before commencing the procurement, and that the executive approve the consequent award of the contract unless otherwise delegated. This update today seeks approval to commence procurement for one additional project, which is to complete passive fire safety works, including fire door installations, fire door repairs, and compartmentation works, that is a thing, for our housing services. This is a long-term contract estimated at £3 million over a 3-year term, and it's required to ensure that the council continues to meet its statutory health and safety responsibilities within the housing service. I want to be clear again that approval today is permission to commence the procurement process only. It does not commit the council to awarding a contract to a specific procurement route or to collaboration arrangements. Any resulting contract awarded that constitutes a key decision will come back to this executive for separate approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. I think you've covered that completely. Are there any other speakers on the item? Seeing none, I assume you're taking that as your proposal. I will therefore second. Can I have all those in favour of the recommendations outlined in agenda item 16 in your report? Thank you, everyone. Item 17, the Ombudsman report. Councillor Long to introduce.
Thank you, Leader. We're asked to note the review of the complaints to the Local Government and Social Care Ombudsman and to the Housing Ombudsman services, which were determined in 2024-25. By way of context, the Housing Ombudsman investigates complaints about a local authority's landlord function. The Local Government and Social Care Ombudsman is responsible for complaints about most of the other functions of the council. Where a resident is not satisfied with a council-provided service, they can complain first to the council, and if their complaint is not resolved to their satisfaction in the first instance, they can make a level 2 complaint to the council. If the level 2 complaint is still not resolved to the resident's satisfaction, they can then escalate the matter to the relevant ombudsman. During 2024-25, there were 4 complaints referred to the Local Government and Social Care Ombudsman having not been resolved to the resident's satisfaction by Waverley's complaints process. 3 of these complaints were upheld by the Ombudsman. 1 of these related to planning, 1 was a standards complaint, and 1 related to a failure of the council to take appropriate enforcement action in relation to the dumping of some soil. Waverley Borough Council has fully implemented all of the recommendations of the Ombudsman. The council already uses the Ombudsman's good practice guides, and it is encouraging members of staff, particularly those in frontline services, to attend training to improve service delivery. The second part of the report before us tonight relates to Waverley's function as a landlord. In its landlord capacity, Waverley Borough Council is responsible for approximately 4,800 homes. I think, in fact, Councillor Merriweather gave the exact number as 4,770 in an earlier report. In 2024-25, there were 4 complaints referred to the Housing Ombudsman, having not been resolved to the residents' satisfaction by Waverley's complaints procedure. All 4 of those complaints were upheld by the Ombudsman with a finding of severe maladministration in respect of 2 of those complaints. When the Ombudsman delivers their findings on an investigation, they provide clear actions for improvement, which the Council is required to comply with. I can confirm that all of the Ombudsman's orders have been implemented in the case of these upheld complaints, and the Council has put in additional officer training in place to ensure that the mistakes that led to these findings of maladministration do not occur again. This report went to the Services Overview and Scrutiny Committee last night, and whilst I was unable to attend the meeting, I did listen in to the live webcast of it, and I would like to thank ONS for their observations. The ONS committee expressed its concern that the Ombudsman had found maladministration in 100% of the cases it reviewed against Waverley, compared with a national average of 76% of cases in authorities with a similar number of landlord properties. What these statistics do not tell us, however, is that the total number of complaints that those other authorities had referred to the Ombudsman. Waverley only had 4 complaints from 4,800 properties. We do not know how many complaints generated the average 76% maladministration in other authorities, so it is impossible to draw a comparison from the 2 percentages. Finally, I'd like to thank Nicola Hames for her comprehensive report into the respective Ombudsman's findings, and for all the officers who've worked hard to ensure that we improve our services in the light of these reports. Thank you.
Thank you, Gemma, and to Nicola and the team for all of their work on this. I've got Councillor Hyman registered to speak. Jerry, it's 9:45. For the sake of those of us who are still here in the room, please do be quick.
Thanks, Chairman. This is a serious issue. The 100% 4 of 4 findings of maladministration or serious maladministration by us. And we mustn't dismiss or park this as problems all sorted. We certainly don't know how many people don't bother complaining because you know, maybe they've tried before or whatever. I do have a concern. Officers have told us that they have learned lessons, they've got training and whatever, but without details of the cases, we really can't be quite sure, as we should be, of the lesson that these lessons learned will be remembered and will be part of an improved culture and improved service. Also, there are 2 sides, I must say, to most stories. Things may not be quite as bad, or may even be even worse than it seems. Officers, for instance, may be unable to give their side of the story publicly, and they might wish to comment on that. Similarly, in some cases, it's possible that local councillors and officers may know better or more than the Ombudsman on the ground. We don't know. Without more information from both sides, I don't think we're in a position really to judge. It doesn't look good, but really, we as councillors have learned nothing from this. That's how I feel. I really don't know whether or not, you know, the extent to which I have to be concerned. Obviously, the headlines there are very concerning, but I think we need to know more about these in future and be able to look at the details, because one of our best tools in ensuring that we give improved services to our residents is from the complaints and their resolution. You know, if there were no complaints whatsoever and nobody wanted to complain, what a wonderful council we'd be, and that's got to be the aim. Are we under-exploiting the complaint system? Are we missing a trick? We're certainly not getting all the information for me to know whether I ought to be discussing with myself or not for the way we're performing. But overall, I think we can just finish by saying we could do better. Thanks. You can remove me from the next 2 items on speaking on 18 and 19. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Hyman. Just to be clear, I would be always very suspicious if a council had no complaints. When I ran the ethics process for a large defence company, I was concerned at one point when it had 0 complaints because it made me feel that nobody felt comfortable complaining. So I would always be wary of that. I would also say as a matter of principle that I always think councils can improve. It doesn't matter how good things are on paper, we can always improve. One of the reasons that we have an in-depth deep dive into complaints and how they're handled at, for example, the Landlord Services Board, is to show how we're listening to to those issues, how we're dealing with the process, how we can improve that process, and how officers and members interact with that process. And there are lots of places that members can, the Audit Committee, Landlord Services Board, and obviously things like this. At the end of the day, we have had 4 cases that have gone through to this far and effectively have been upheld by the Ombudsman. So we can't speculate on things that we don't know, and I would certainly advise that either members here or full council or indeed ONS or yourself, Councillor Hyman, speculate without information. You've made it very clear, and I agree with you, that there are elements that we don't know, and so I'm not choosing to speculate on things that I don't know, as unfortunately you have done in a few cases. Councillor Long, is there anything you want to say in response to that, or shall I bring it to recommendations?
I'm happy for you to bring it to the recommendations, please, Leader.
Thank you. In which case, I assume you're proposing the recommendations? Yeah.
I am indeed.
And I shall second, in which case, are the recommendations set out in agenda item 17 agreed? Thank you. Item 18, the Corporate Delivery Plan Progress Report, which is with Councillor Keel to introduce.
Thank you very much, Leader. I'm very pleased to move this item. I believe I have a seconder. The 2025-26 Delivery Plan Mid-Year Progress Report provides an update on the progress the Council has made towards meeting the priorities set out in our Corporate Strategy Delivery Plan. Thank you to Overview and Scrutiny for their consideration of this report and to our officers for compiling it for us. Of the 57 actions covered in the report, 55 were complete or on track for completion by their original deadline. Highlights of these include the delivery of 47 new affordable homes, the launch of online learning platform Seedle, reducing barriers faced by residents and accessing employment opportunities, and the installation of cycle stands at St Mark and All Saints Primary School, Godalming, encouraging active and sustainable travel for young people in the borough. The report paints an impressive picture of the efforts that are being made across our services to deliver on our corporate strategy priorities. This could not have been achieved without the hard work and dedication of all of our staff, and I would like to thank them for the efforts they have made in bringing our corporate strategy to life. There is still work to be done to complete the remainder of the delivery plan before the end of this financial year, but this report provides an encouraging outlook on the progress we are continuing to build upon. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Keel. Absolutely agree with every word you've said there, and I won't repeat it. Are there any other comments in the room? Thank you, everyone. I will now go to the recommendations. So are the recommendations set out in the report at agenda item 18 agreed? Thank you. In which case, then moving to item 19, the corporate delivery plan with Councillor Keel to introduce again.
Thank you very much. I'm very pleased to move this item. I believe I also have a seconder.
Please, second.
Thank you. The 2026-27 Corporate Strategy Delivery Plan sets out the most significant projects and actions that Waverley Borough Council will take to fulfil our corporate strategy priorities in the next financial year. These actions include beginning the construction of a new passive house leisure centre in Cranley, transferring valued community assets to local groups, completing restoration works to the front facade of Wilmer House, Farnham, maximising opportunities for affordable housing and maintaining strong and sustainable finances in advance of LGR. With government plans for local government reorganisation in Surrey next year, the 2026-27 delivery plan will be the final delivery plan that Waverley Borough Council will work towards. This delivery plan therefore focuses on the steps we will take in our final year to ensure that our legacy continues to benefit the residents of Waverley long into the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Keel. Can I also take this opportunity to thank the team that have done this? I mean, there are little moments where it is a little bit sad that this is kind of, we're into a lot of, these are the last things Waverley will do on X. And there'll be obviously a lot more of those over the next year. And I think for a lot of people here, and there are people here who've been elected or worked here quite a lot longer than myself in this room and certainly beyond these walls. Right, any speakers on the corporate delivery plan? In which case, are the recommendations set out in the report at the agenda item 19 agreed? Right. Now, before we move on to the last item, which is Cranley Leisure Centre, as it is 6 minutes to 10, I'd like to propose a motion that we extend beyond 10 o'clock to finish the last item of business before we conclude, so that we don't have to go into an additional session later next week. Can I have all those in favour of the motion to extend? Thank you very much, everyone. In which case, I will then go on to item 21, Cranley Leisure Centre, with Councillor Townsend to introduce.
Thank you, Leader. And I'd like to thank officers for all their hard work on this project. This report provides an updated project position with a reviewed cost plan. And this did come to executive in January. However, since then, as a result of an internal review of our Section 106 agreements, this has provided an updated assessment of the likelihood of certain contributions being received, revealing risks that were previously not fully visible. To maintain transparency and ensure our financial assumptions are realistic, the projected Section 106 income for this project has been revised, resulting in a reduced funding total of 1.4 million. This updated report includes the revised viability appraisal reflecting this change, with completion for this project still predicted for winter 2027. The report is going to obviously go through the committee cycle, and as was mentioned earlier, it went to ONS last night, which I attended, and will go to full council on the 25th of February. With regard again to the ONS recommendations, the ones that were made on Tuesday the 16th of December were all covered in the report, just to clarify that. And then with also the other recommendation, which was about the that the figure for the increased loan requirements be included in the public report, officers have confirmed that we will amend the report for council to include the total borrowing requirement of this project within the financial implications section, and the total borrowing requirement, just for clarity, is 14.8 million. There is one other item that I mentioned earlier, that within the council report there'll also be an additional Appendix 4, which will outline the passive house, more information on the passive house standard as well, to provide that information that the ONS requested. Whilst the current proposal is based on additional borrowing, officers will continue to bid for additional SIL funds or other funds that may replace this borrowing in the future, and any other funding opportunities which arise. And if successful, the report outlines that this could reduce the payback period from 50 to 47 years. This change, I must stress that this does not change the overall budget amount that came to you before in January. And as I highlighted, this has been, the costs in this have been independently assessed, and this has been rigorously reviewed and analysed and challenged by independent assessor, which is Atkins Realis, and that is outlined in your report. A business case viability assessment of the revised costs has been undertaken, and you have a copy in your exempt Appendix 2, which I had wished that the ONS perhaps had referred to. You know, obviously they couldn't put the information in public, but there was a lot of information within that appendix which could have answered some of the queries that actually came up. And the exempt Appendix 1 again provided far more details around the options, which there were lots of questions on, but it was not referred to that information was actually available. So within this report, there are 4 options, and option 1 obviously delivers the original approval to deliver the new low carbon leisure centre, which supports our corporate priorities, as has been outlined by Councillor Keel just a moment ago. You know, the corporate priority to deliver a passive house leisure centre in Cranley, and also turns a deficit asset of £26,000 per annum cost to the council into a positive revenue generator of an additional £450,000. again, which has benefit to the general fund. With the Section 106 adjustment, the payback period for the council's total investment, including this SIL that we've already secured, and Section 106 funds would increase from 50, which was outlined in the October 2023 report, to 52 years. Option 2, which was provided, again, this answers some of the ONS questions. It was in the report, is that by removing that passive house element, and yes, I was a little bit confused about some of the wording about, you know, low carbon energy, but design, because without a full design, you cannot get full costs on anything. But by removing the passive house ambition, that would have to result in a redesign, and that would be another £115,000. And it would reduce the overall borrowing costs, the overall project costs to 35 million. So approximately 1 million less, but that would still require an additional 1.25 million in borrowing. And while this option would reduce costs, it would also result in a loss of guaranteed energy savings, and it would result in higher energy costs. And both of these were factored into the original viability assessment. And we have got an additional appendix within this report, wasn't available in the January one, with some charts on the end, and Appendix 3 showing the different energy consumptions, which are very impressive. So without the passive house, the energy savings, which are within the report of approximately 125,000, that's annual savings from year 2. This would extend, obviously, the payback period for this option 2 beyond the estimated 55-year life of the asset and reaching approximately 59 years. So I hope that information will be taken into account by members of the ONS. It was all there within the report. Option 3 again is within there, which is reducing down floor space. Again, you'll get some savings on the budget of about 5.25 million. But equally, this would affect the management fee, reducing the original viability appraisal, and based on the adjustments, the payback period would increase to approximately 60 years, and it would also not meet the needs of Cranley and the surrounding villages by reducing down approximately 750 metres squared on the leisure centre itself. Option 4 would obviously be a managed closure, and that's again within the report, and that would be a huge loss for Cranley and the surrounding villages, not just for health and well-being, but for the thousands of visitors that actually come to the leisure centre. And, you know, that also attracts footfall to our high street as well. So it would be a huge effect on our high street. I'd just like to say, since we did do the budget in October 2023, we have done a huge amount of further design development. We've done market testing, contractor pricing, and obviously inflation has been there as well. And that is one of the primary drivers for the increased budget. And it's no surprise it's affected the construction industry across the country. And over the past 2 years, we've seen unprecedented inflation in building materials and labour, and particularly in some of the items like steel and concrete that would be used typically within leisure centres as well. So although the increase has slowed, the costs do continue to rise, and labour costs also remain a significant pressure. So it is clear that the scheme cannot be delivered within the original budget. So we are therefore seeking to increase the overall budget by approximately 4.8 million, which just brings the total to just over 35.9 million. As I said, the project team has already successfully secured some SIL funding, and that funding was not included previously in the approved budget. So we're bringing that into this budget as well. And it includes contingencies of approximately 12%, which then reflects the ongoing risks with inflation and the market volatility. And I think that's a really prudent and necessary position for the project team to take within the current climate. We've also, as you will see within the report, we've accommodated the additional need for parking during the construction phase, and that provides a minimum of 100 parking spaces at all times during the construction phase, but that does extend the project out slightly. And also there's an additional cost of £358,000. Turning to the design itself, the proposed passive house certification is a critical element of this scheme, and that makes it viable over the lifetime of the project. It's not a gold standard, it's a recognised standard that guarantees energy savings and an operational carbon performance. That's what it does. It's not a gold standard, it is a standard. And it provides the guaranteed energy savings. It's one of the only standards that provides those guaranteed energy savings. So you can have a low carbon building. You will not know what energy savings you will get till that building is built, and then you get your bills in. And that's the reason why we have chosen to lock in those energy savings within this project. So, the recommendation before you is to deliver what we agreed originally, which is the approved scheme, passive house certified leisure centre with the agreed facility mix. And obviously it turns this asset into, which is a deficit asset at the moment, into a positive revenue generator. In the next phase of the project, we will be value engineering as we go along. We have looked at, I think at one stage there was something in the ONS about, they haven't taken into account lockers. Lockers will be, and all the fixtures will all be value engineered as we go through. That is just one item. It's not that we forgot about the lockers, but everything within it, the wall coverings and things like that, will obviously, as the project progresses, we looked into, and where we can make efficiency savings, obviously we will be doing that. So, what's important is that we carry on with what was originally, well, I hope the executive will support the original approval that we made and understand the reasons for the increases, and also the reducing the risk of the Section 106 monies not aligning with the project timeline at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. I've got...
Go on.
I have no doubt. I've got one registered speaker. Councillor Hyman, did you want to speak on this item?
Very quickly, yes, thank you, Chairman, for the last time. It's an interesting story, continually increasing costs, isn't it, for various reasons, and was discussed, fortunately, at ONS, so we don't have to. It does feel like Groundhog Day, doesn't it? For now, to hopefully save time on 25th, I think it's going to Council. If you can just please answer two simple questions or give me a couple of assurances. Firstly, will the development be or contract be open book? And secondly, is it intended that the contractual terms will ensure that above the contingencies, no further escalation of project costs can occur? So is it going to be open book, and can we be sure that there's no further escalation of project costs above the stated contingencies? Thank you very much indeed, and good night.
Thank you, Jerry. On the first one, we'll have to get back to you in writing because I don't think anybody here can answer that off the top of our heads right now, and I'd rather come back separately. Do you want to take the second one, Liz?
Yeah, officers gave assurances to ONS last night. It was in the actual papers about the project costs and the payback period as well. So that was provided last night.
Mark?
Thank you, Leader. I'm slightly confused by one of Councillor Hyman's comments, as I was at ONS. The matter before us is nothing to do with costs, it's to do with funding. And the fact is that the timing difference or the timing problem is that the Section 106 is not going to come on stream within the time scale of this, so we have to replace it with something else. As out of an abundance of caution, we have assumed that will be borrowing, but we know that there are other avenues, including strategic sale and other replacement funding sources. What this demonstrates is that even with the Section 106 coming out of it, this project still stands on its own 2 feet with that additional debt, which may never actually have to be called in.
Okay, just a couple of last bits from me on this. I think there are opportunities last night where members of ONS could have really helped the debate by reading the papers. Just because something is written in exempt, that doesn't mean you can't refer to it or indeed not go and read it. And if they'd have chosen to go into exempt, that was obviously up to them to discuss if they wanted to go in and discuss the details. There seemed to be quite a few people who just simply hadn't engaged with the details of the report, and not just the report from this for ONS last night, but the dozens of iterations of components of the Cranley Leisure Centre project that we've all been through, right the way back to, are we going to do this at all? Are we going to do a passive house leisure centre? We've had so many iterations of this where members have been kept up to date. For people to just sit there and not read the papers and put recommendations that are clearly stated in the papers was disappointing. Are there any other speakers on the item itself? In which case I will go, so I assume, Liz, you're proposing the recommendations. I will second them. Is that right? Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Ludo.
In which case, can I bring forward, a second, I've lost my pages again. Are the recommendations set out in the report in the agenda item 21 agreed? Right, and before I gavel us out at exactly 22:10, by the time I finish, can I thank you all for all of 22:10 as to 2200 hours and 10 minutes, not 20 to 10, to be clear. Can I thank everybody for all of their work, particularly today, because it's been a very long day for members and officers. I would just note for the record that you spent not 1 minute of public time complaining about your workload, which was significantly longer than the workload of the committee that sat yesterday. So thank you all for your time today and for all of the work that's gone into getting it to us. And at 22:10, 100 hours, meeting